Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP. Silverstone, the British round, the UK round of the MotoGP calendar. You'll see it's me by myself for now. Paul Scott is about to join him. I sent him the link very late to join, so I'll take full responsibility with that. Let me just tell him here. Should have it now. So yeah, we'll just wait for Paul to join us. But while he does that, hello to Yvonne Pretorius. Evening, Rob and Paul. Just Rob for now. Well done to David Alonso. So proud. Yvonne, it was a brilliant ride from David Alonso. You know, we knew it was going to come a point where his Moto2, campaign would start kicking off, and he obviously has a love affair with the Silverstone circuit because that's where he really kicked his Moto3 career off. It was brilliant. That Moto2 race, I mean, all the racing this weekend was absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, David Alonso, brilliant. Well done there. Dick Crosby, evening, gents. The season is getting exciting. Yes, it is. Jason Harrington, good evening. Rob and Paul, looking forward to the chat this evening. Paolo Chiacchetti, good evening. All looking forward to tonight's discussion. Jacques Clausen, David Hayes, Leroy Barter, Brett Lawson, Al Camino, Chris D, Wayne Taylor, Craig Hicks, Deep Sea Diver Smith, Rian Petit, CP Boertz, David Gallahan, Rainer Albrecht, hello, Rob, love from sunny Ukraine. John Kotze, it was cold here on Sunday. The wind was rough. John, it was so rough, and it was like Cape Town weather. It's 20 seasons in one day. It poured with rain, and then it got sunny, and then the wind was the horrible part. It really was. Michael Rogers art. How's Michael Rogers art? I mean, it's been a long weekend. It's been a long week, I must say already. How's it, Paul and Rob? Greetings, everyone. Gary Granger, Wade Williams, Broadside, Bradley Johnson, Daryl Holmes, Trevor Dalglish, Speed Angle South Africa, Ashley Belden, Ashraf Gajar, Francois Retief, Carlo Williams, Sebastian Tromp, Ludovic Burke, Kevin Furry, and Mimi. Hi, still feeling devastated for Fabio. Mimi, I agree. I just watched the video, and I was in the press conference right at the end where the journalist said to him, are you feeling there's hope now? And he just broke down and in tears, and we all got very emotional there. It was a very emotional time. So yeah, absolutely. Ivan Pilisic, Wayne Taylor, and Hemath Kupala, and Nico. How's it? I'm very pleased to say that Paul eventually got my late link, and we can welcome him now. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, Rob, all good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Sorry, man. I went to the couch. I was like, I've got 40 minutes. I was watching something on YouTube. I did one of those, I mean, my 43-year-old body is just tired, and I did one of these, and I woke up and I went, and I sprinted to you, and I sent you the link late. Sorry.
Yeah, no stress whatsoever. Listen, Rob, I was going to say to you, because, we normally have our 2 or 3 minute chat before we go live, and good evening to everyone who's tuned in. I was going to say, Rob, you don't mind if tonight I just listen, because I've watched your downloads from Saturday and Sunday, and you just must have so much to talk about. Obviously, we can discuss the racing, but, as much of the racing, not on this weekend, but all the other weekends, what we see on TV is what everyone sees. But you've now got all those behind the scenes things, and man, I was just so envious.
It is. I was jealous of myself in most of the time. But yeah, it was, Paul, it just paints a completely different picture. No, we've still got a lot to talk about, because it is, there is a lot that we talk about from the outside that, we get right, and it's obvious, not obvious, but it's there for everyone to see. But then there's those other avenues and those other things that you only get to see and hear when you're really in the paddock. And like you said, the way riders explain things, you can tell a lot by their demeanor and how they talk across. Is it smiley? Is it PR? Is it, you could just tell so much about their body language. So yeah, we've got lots to talk about, because I really did get a lot of useful information. I tried to keep my ears open wherever I could. There's a lot of talk going on in that paddock at the moment. So yeah, got a lot of info to talk about. But we'll pick apart the race and that like we normally do, and I'll just throw in the little bits and pieces that I certainly think are relevant here. Rainer Albrecht, Neerman Paul, what's with that beanie? It should be Ducati now.
Yeah, one day. But listen, you got to be honest, Rainer. If you take Honda from 2024, 23, 22, 21, blah, 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 and Honda of 2025, man, my heart is happy. They've just made such strides. And I know everyone can say, but Zarco's had 2 good races, blah, blah, blah. Marini has scored more points he scored in 6 out of 7 races. Mia had a relatively good weekend. So, yeah, certainly, my blood is red, and it certainly seems that the team is on the up.
But it is. But Robert Mackey, my Scottish mate, who thankfully I got to see on Thursday in the paddock, has a very relevant question. Yeah, most importantly, did Paul get a signed Marc Marquez cap? And Paul, I can tell you now, your signed Marc Marquez Ducati cap, it's a Marquez Ducati cap, is on its way back when Greg Maloney in 3 weeks' time gets back to South Africa from the Isle of Man TT.
Rob, so how am I going to sleep now for 3 weeks? We like kids, eh? Now, all I'm going to think about is I'm going to have to get his number from you and phone him and make sure he's okay and take extra insurance on him to make sure yes, now I can't wait. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure, man. It's an absolute, I always try and you've been so good to me. For people that don't know, Paul actually pays me a lot of money to be on the show.
Luckily, I pay him in rands, not in pounds.
So yeah, no, it's a good way for me to say thank you to you, Paul. Mark Lloyd, Mark, got to see him at the round this weekend. You don't get to spend as much time as you'd like to with a lot of these guys because obviously they're there to work and they're busy. But great to have you on the show, Mark. And another tough weekend for you guys, but we can dive into that. I've gathered quite a lot of information, certainly from the KTM riders and their feelings in the rider debriefs on what was a very difficult weekend once again for KTM. Great having a wee chat with Uncle Paul on a bicycle ride the other day. His passion for the sport, very awesome. Calvin Mills, so that's a nice.
Yeah, can you believe it? I'm riding along. One of the guys we're riding with punctures. So everyone stops, which is the polite thing to do. And we're standing in the sun because it was quite chilly. I mean, it was, 7:15 in the morning. And he just, out of the blue, I've never met him before. He says, "Hey, do you enjoy doing your show?" Well, he shouldn't have said that, eh? Eventually, I think he was like, I wish this I could just shut up now. But Calvin, nice to have met you. And thanks for enjoying the show and joining in.
You know what, Paul, it makes it all worthwhile. Sometimes it can be a bit of a drag. I know certainly for you with the time difference. For me, it's an hour earlier, and then sometimes, it's a Tuesday night. The same thing happened to me in Silverstone. I'd be standing by the KTM truck or wherever, and the guy would say, "You're Rob from that show, aren't you?" And I'd be like, "Hey, also," and it was great. And a couple of British guys, there were a couple of Portuguese, so it was very like multinational. So yeah, big thank you to everyone who took the time out to come say hello to me at the track and that tune into the channel. I know a lot of them don't always comment. They like to just, sit in the background and listen. So it was great meeting you all and thank you for all the support and the kind words and everything. It really does mean a lot. And it just gives us that energy to keep going, on those days where it's a little bit harder than others. Reino Albrecht, can we talk about the rumors of Pecco being off to Pramac? Reino, one step at a time, my buddy. Let's do this. Let's do this slowly now. Take it easy. So, Paul, I want to quickly start with Ryke Woodley, our South African connection in Moto3. Great to see him and his dad, Arushan. At one point, I didn't think he was going to make it with the injury. Luckily, he passed the fitness test and he was there. They took me myself and Greg into the pit box. We got to meet the team coordinator, had a little discussion with him, show us the, all the inner workings and stuff. And, Moto3 doesn't get the kind of, the time of day it deserves. And the team coordinator was the same. We're part of the show, but we're very much like the intro actor. It's like, listen, do your thing and then kind of push off type thing. So, very, very appreciative of the kind of coverage that we give, especially Ryke, because it double backs onto their team because they're really not in the spotlight at all. And it's hard for them, we don't think of it like this, but for them to go find sponsors and everything that they need to run an operation like that, which is not cheap, it's hard because they don't kind of get they've had their Sunday morning warm-up taken away. There's all these factors that just come into it where they're very much okay, well, do your thing and then shut up and let the big boys play. So it was great to get a bit of insight there, but Ryke Woodley still recovering from that injury, double long lap penalty, first time at Silverstone, the tricky conditions that are there. It was always going to be a tough weekend, but typical maturity of Ryke and having his dad there. They had a plan, go in there, learn, don't do anything stupid. If it rains, it's time in the rain, learn about riding in the rain, all those kind of aspects. It's always about the result, but sometimes it's not about the result, and you could see for them, it wasn't about the result. It was about the experience and learning And that's exactly what he did. Double long lap penalty around Silverstone, learning Silverstone. It's almost a 6-kilometer circuit. It's not an easy thing. But the biggest restriction he had, because it was his right wrist, they even tried to move the bars out as much as they could to kind of, not put as much pressure on the wrist. But on a Moto3 bike, you can't have wide bars because of aerodynamics and just the riding style and that they have. So they try to make the bike as comfortable for him as possible. But at the end of the day, almost a 6-kilometer track, that wrist, when Moto3 guys especially, that wrist is just bent all the time with body position and how they ride. So in a lot of pain, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like you said, you can take ibuprofen or Panado or whatever, at that level, and with what those guys do, it doesn't really do much. So a mature ride, a tough weekend, but it's those tough weekends where you sometimes learn the most, and I think Ryke certainly did.
Yeah, Rob, well, he's proved himself to us this whole season. Yes, he got hurt and he suffered a fracture. That's part of bike racing. That's going to happen I don't think there's one guy in that field who hasn't had that happen at least once. So it was disappointing when it happens, but exactly what you say, it's how he recovers from that. And I was so pleased to see that he didn't have the best result. He didn't get points, which most certainly would be his goal. But he finished. He looked good. The little bits you saw in the background. I know then after his long lap penalties, he was way off. And he even said, the wind. Now, we from Joburg predominantly. I'm sure he would have done most of his racing in and around Gauteng. When the wind blows at 20 k's an hour, we think it's blowing a gale. From what I could gather there, they were having gusts of 50 to 60 k's an hour. Now, to get to learn the track and the conditions, I mean, it's an incredible story that he just makes it through the weekend, and I'm sure almost as if he's unflustered. I'd like to know if they said anything, the team kind of on a hush-hush note, listen, we're very happy with him. Was anything like that mentioned?
I didn't really ask the question, to be honest, but you could definitely see there's a great connection there. There's a great working environment there. When I went into the pit, Ryke was with his crew chief. They were going through some data, but the whole team was, as they always are, very welcoming and everything. Rushan said they're very happy with the team. I think his performances and his teammate Buchanan, who's crashed a lot and shown his pace, but also crashed a lot. It's a really good team. It's a good environment for Ryke to be learning, the hard, school of hard knocks that is Moto3 in that environment. So looks happy, looks like he's taking it all in. Ryke has always been a quiet kind of keeps to himself kind of guy, very respectful. Hello, Uncle Rob. Hello, Uncle Greg. There's no kind of anything about Ryke. He wants to go there. He loves riding motorcycles, and I think we've got a good rider on our hands there. I know it's a cutthroat world at MotoGP paddock, but there's a good rider in there. There's a good talent. There's a good person in there, and I can certainly see him climbing his way through the ranks there and becoming another South African flying the flag highly for us.
Absolutely. And Rob, in 2 weeks' time, that I know it was a fractured arm bone, whatever it's called, but it's right at the wrist joint. In 2 weeks' time, youngsters heal so quickly. He'll be, if he was at 85% this weekend, he'll be at 95% next weekend or next race. So great to hear that. And we look forward to watching him in Spain in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, Paul. So unfortunately, no Darren Binde in Moto2. We wish him a speedy recovery. Hopefully he'll be back for the next round in Aragon. So there's nothing really to touch upon there. But we will talk about the Moto2 race quickly. I mean, all three. Silverstone, for as unenergetic and boring as the atmosphere can be at Silverstone, purely because it's just such a big space. This year, more so, they had this crazy idea to bring the date forward, literally a week before the TT, which was a bit crazy. People don't have exorbitant amount of money to kind of do all these things. But anyway, backfired because next year they're already going back to an August date. But it did provide some of probably the best racing action in all three classes we've seen so far this year. Moto3 was simply sublime. Moto2 was just out of this world. Senna Aegis, I mean, perfect. Played that race perfectly to pick up his first win. Fantastic. Aaron Canet can just he's just that unlucky man of Moto2. He just never seems to be able to just get over that line. You know, he does all the hard work and just can't put it together. And then David Alonso showing his worth. There's so many great things coming out of Moto2 at the moment. So as boring, as unenergetic and everything, there was a lot of construction work going on at Silverstone this year. They're building like a whole new entrance with a goat kart track. So it's not like driving into Mugello where they've got this giant helmet as an entrance, and you kind of just get weak at the knees. Silverstone's kind of got that Kyalami vibe where there's history, there's all that history and iconicness and everything, but you're let down by all these buildings and stuff. But either way, it produced really good, entertaining racing, especially that Moto2 class.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the first time, we saw Gonzalez under a bit of pressure, and he was the one who made the mistake. He seemed rattled. But yeah, I agree with you. Poor old Aaron Canet. And with about half a lap to go, he had pulled a little bit of a gap. I thought, well, he should have this. But yes, AJ and the guys behind him were just on him. So yeah, really a good race. Dixon would obviously, not that he's my favorite in any way, but I do like to see a home guy have a good race. And he just couldn't go. He seemed like, whether it was the conditions or I'm not going to say that the atmosphere and being at home got to him. He's normally very good and rises above that. But he was, for a home race and the hometown hero, I think he would have been disappointed. And I think his race was disappointing. And as I say, he's certainly not my favorite, but he's been in the mix. And the weekend, he really would have wanted to be the guy, just didn't happen for him.
Forgot to tell you, Paul, I also got a signed cap from Dixon that I sent back for you. So
it's gonna Ollie Moto, I was leaning, it'll go next to my Rossi cap.
Hey, listen, Ollie Moto played the game. It's just such a big place. There were so many people that I wanted to go meet and see outside of the paddock. Yes, we got a P1 parking, which last year was right by the paddock, and the lady that gave us the paddock pass, it was still like, P1, it's right outside the paddock. We were like, yes, rejoicing. I don't have to walk 25 kilometers to the paddock. Great. Meanwhile, P0 is now the closed parking, which is MotoGP staff basically, or they call it staff parking. And then P1 was by the old pit straight, and then you take a shuttle to the paddock. And once you're in that paddock, to get out of it and back, it was just such a hard exercise. So I didn't get to see Ollie Moto, unfortunately, but he did send me a picture of him outside the Marc Marquez merch stand. I didn't see him with any Marc Marquez merch, but I think he bought one and just hit it on the slide, so I wouldn't see it. But he was fully dressed in his Rossi. Fully dressed. I must post. I must post it. I really must. So well done, Ollie Moto. Well done, Ollie Moto, for playing the game. Just to end off, so we can get into MotoGP, on Jake Dixon. Love him, hate him, whatever. That the thing that he did with his helmet before the race for Sylvain Gintoli's son, who's suffering with cancer and stuff, to do his helmet up. It was designed by the son. They auctioned it off. I must give Jake Dixon a round of applause. And he entertained the son the whole weekend, and it was a great side of Jake Dixon to see. So yeah, think what you want of him. When I saw that, I was like, you know what, that was something really special, and well done to everyone involved with that. So brilliant. Now, Paul, there's a lot of talking points. Reino and a couple of guys already going on about the GP25s or Ducati struggled this weekend. Di Giannantonio used those exact words in his debrief on Sunday. We got boxed around this weekend. We took a lot of punches this weekend, Ducati, and now people jump on the bandwagon. It's because Marc Marquez is there, and he's developing the bike like they did the Honda. They're going to make it for him, and now all of a sudden these bikes are cuck and any. I can understand that. I don't see any evidence of it as much as people are pulling it at that Ducati are going purely with what Marc says, and they're going to turn into a Honda where they've built a bike that only Marc can ride. I don't think Gigi Dall'Igna is like that. I think they pride themselves on making this adaptable bike for all the riders that they have. It was a blip in the matrix for me, the Silverstone weekend. The biggest issue on that Sunday race was the medium front tire. And Paul, I had no idea. So obviously you get soft, medium, hard. Soft, especially in the cooler conditions that Silverstone had because of the wind, you had to go with it because it was the only tire that could get up to temperature and hold temperature. The medium was the next best bet because the soft, yes, it does that, but it potentially wouldn't last the 19 laps. As we saw in the sprint race on Saturday, it didn't last 8 laps, 6 laps for some riders. So a lot of the riders, even on after the Saturday's debrief, said, yeah, it's not great, but we've got to go with this medium tire. It's got to be medium because the soft's not going to last. And then Sunday comes along, the start, which we'll talk about, and the restart that everyone is having a hiffy about the rules, and obviously it's one-sided to Marc Marquez and Alex Marquez, but these rules were written, I think, long before those kids were even born. But anyway, so the Ducati riders especially went with the medium. We've got a 19-lap race to do. We've got to go with a medium. And then there were those that went with a risk with the soft. Now, the biggest difference from Saturday to Sunday, there was definitely track temperature difference. The wind was a bit higher and everything, but you must also remember setup between Saturday and Sunday with some teams is a little bit different for the sprint race and the main race. So, you load maybe the front a bit more and whatever. So there were all these factors that took into consideration that the soft might work. And then Pierre Taramasso, I was sitting there watching in the media center, Pierre Taramasso still put up a graphic saying, sweet, the soft will work in these conditions. Then I spoke to some of the riders and they were like, we were told by our Michelin guy that soft would not work. So a little bit of miscommunication or something there from Michelin. But anyway, getting back to the Ducati, it was a blip weekend for Ducati. It's not a case of they're going to go to Aragon, they're going to dominate, and then everyone's going to look like idiots that commented that now this bike's gone to Marc Marquez and Marc is ruining Ducati. I can't believe when I read a comment from some people where they say, I said it at the beginning of the year, Marc will eventually grab hold of Ducati and ruin it. How do you ruin? Did he ruin Honda? He bought them how many world championships? Honda ruined themselves. Now Marc's going to ruin Ducati. Those kind of comments I just laugh at. I really do. But anyway, so a blip in the matrix, the medium tire, Paul, I cannot believe how many people hate that medium tire. Maverick Vinales was like, I've hated that tire from the first day I rode with it. I kind of want to put my hand up and say, well, why did you take it then? But it just seemed like the only option, especially for the KTM, because the soft would just not work. But everyone hates that medium tire. I don't know why Michelin even have the thing, to be honest. But anyway, to the point. Medium Michelin rear tire, front tire is the biggest downfall of Ducati on Sunday. End of story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing the comments that now they're building the bike to favor Marc. Pecco's been moaning about this bike since day one. In fact, after the first test this year, he didn't say too much at the end of last year, but the first test this year till Sunday, he's been saying he hasn't got the same front end feel that he had with the 24. So that's his impression. Marc never rode the 24 bike. He rode a 23 and then he jumped on this edition of the bike. So how they can say they've changed the bike to suit Marc, I don't think so. I agree with you. Gigi D'Aligno is going to do what he thinks is right. Whether it suits Marc or Alex or Pecco or whoever else, he's going to do what he thinks is right for the bike because he's a brand guy before he's a rider guy, in my opinion. So I think that comment is a little bit harsh at the moment. It's also 7 races in. We're way too early for them to have made changes that affect everyone else but benefit Marc. Marc struggled this weekend, no matter what anyone. If you look at the results, he did okay, but he struggled by his standards. The Gian Antonio said exactly that. Everyone struggled. Ducati, for whatever reason, just couldn't get things the way they wanted it this weekend. Marc said if you've changed 4 different things on the bike and you've got the same problem, maybe the problem's not the bike. So he's kind of let's see what we have to change. But they all agreed for whatever reason. And I don't think it's like next week at Aragon, we know it's a low grip surface. I don't think Silverstone's quite like that because then it would have benefited Marc. So what the issue was, I don't know. But it certainly affected all 6 of the Ducatis. They got fairly good results, but they struggled to get the results. So that just shows where normally, you have 2 or 3 Ducatis running at the front and they're going to win. Yeah, Zarco won in different conditions 2 weeks ago, but the Ducatis were good the whole weekend. This weekend, when they were good, they were on a knife's edge. And that's why I think they were a little bit taken aback. This track we know works very well, always has for the Aprilia. So they knew it was going to be a good weekend. People were saying from Friday afternoon, watch Bezzecchi, he's going to have a good race. No one was really punting the Ducatis. So it is definitely, it's just a nemesis circuit to them. And I agree with you, next week or 2 weeks' time in Aragon, it's going to be normal procedure resumed. So we're going to see 4 or 5 Ducatis running at the front in qualifying. And, unless guys fall off or whatever, we'll see normal service resumed.
Yeah, we can't forget last year, Ducati dominated with Bastianini, but it was, again, run in August, better temperatures, that favored them. It was literally down to the fact that it wasn't even just a case of Ducati struggling on the medium tire. Brad and the KTMs were worse off. Yeah, Pedro Acosta was on the soft, and that's gave him a benefit. But there were the other riders on medium tires that suffered. The riders on the soft tire benefited. We saw that with everything that was going on. So yeah, I think people are just, again, it's just that age old this hatred for Marc. I can't believe it. Having said that, the hatred for Marc Marquez, I was lucky enough on the Friday morning, and I've learned this lesson. I went and I bought the Marc Marquez cap, a couple of Marc Marquez cap, your one, Renault, and then I bought one that I sold to a mate and stuff. So I went and bought that stuff pretty early. Then I get it signed on Friday that my whole weekend can carry on. So I'm not chasing autographs in that the whole weekend. It can become a bane of my life. Anyway, then a good mate of mine says, oh no, can he get a shirt and a cap as well? Cool. Now I've got to do this from the paddock back to the merch stand story. So I did that stupidly on Sunday morning. So I thought, okay, it's cool. There was lots of stock there. Cool. There were 3 stands where you could buy Marc Marquez Ducati stuff, which was the Ducati Manchester official kind of store with bikes and that. Nothing. Not one item of Marc Marquez left. Sold out. Gone. Then there was the Marc Marquez. So there's the Ducati racing stuff, which is Pecco and whatever. And then there's the Marc Marquez stuff, which he's got the Ducati alignment stuff as well. Gone. Certain caps, gone. Sold out. It looked like Macro a few years ago that got looted. Just gone. Just out of there. And let me tell you, every single time you go into the paddock, there's this queue outside Marc Marquez's pit waiting for him. Fabio Quartararo is still very popular. This was Brad's home track there. I've never met so many South Africans in my life, to be honest, in that paddock. Marc Marquez is still the man. And I think that's what gets under everyone's skin, is that it's that Marc Marquez Rossi thing. No, he can't. You can't overtake MotoGP. Rossi stand was there selling his Rossi stuff and the VR46 stuff, and still a couple of people, including Olimoto and his VR46. That'll never go away because of who the guy is and what he did for the sport. It'll never go away. Yeah. But Olimoto and anyone, feel free to put in your. There was still more VR46 gear being worn by people than anything else. Olimoto. I don't know. Maybe he was out in the grandstands and stuff, so he would have a much better kind of analysis on that. But from what I saw, there was definitely the Marc Marquez kind of takeover is happening. Everything about, not everything, but Paul, when that guy walked into that media debrief, other guys walk in, like Rins will walk in and you forget the guy's there and they have to hey, come, it's Rins, he's debriefing, Raul, some kids, please come talk to this. Mark, everyone just dropped. There was a time where we were talking to, I don't know if it was Digi or someone, and Mark walked in and sat down. People picked up their phones that were recording. I can't remember which rider it was. Like, cheers, my bud. Thanks. Well done. And boof, straight to Mark. And that presence. And I said it, a couple of years ago when I met Rossi. It's just a man. It's just a guy. When he walks out, I'm going to act all cool, and they come out and that aura takes. You get weak at the knees, and you just look at him and like, hello, sir. You do. You turn into a kid. These guys are your idols, and they've got this aura, this presence about them. Mark has that. Now, he had it in a way when he was at Honda, but I don't know what it is. I said it at the beginning of the year in that red suit. I don't know what it is, but it's like power. So anyway, Mark is this big talking point. Love or hate. the hate side brings out this. You see, Ducati battle because it's Marc. It's Marc's fault. Woohoo!
Yeah.
For God's sake, man. Anyway, trust me, Rob, I was out in the stands. VR46 still reigns supreme. Marc will never match his popularity and match that. And much of that is down to him being unpopular with Rossi fans. Well, Olimo just kind of just explained it perfectly.
Rob, but Marc said it 2015, they had their big fallout. I want to say about 2017, maybe 18, before he got injured, he said, I remember the interview, it was with a Spanish broadcaster, but it was done in English. And Marc said, I'll never want to take that away from Rossi. He said, Rossi has made MotoGP what it is. He said, I'm here to win world championships. I don't care about how many fans I've got. And he's saying that with all due respect to his fan base and to people who don't like. He's not saying I don't care about you. That's not his focus. And I'm not for a second saying it was Rossi's. Rossi's personality was that pull you in, and he started all this, the antics after you win a race. Before that, the guys celebrated, waved, maybe took a flag from their country, did a lap. Rossi started, who'll ever forget jumping in the Portaloo, the chicken man, so he put MotoGP on the map. Nobody can ever deny that. So we're not comparing apples with apples. Now, and I've said it, and you've said it many times, we're looking at Marquez for what he does as a MotoGP racer. He's the top of the pops. Love him or hate him, and I'll say this, and a lot of people won't agree, he's the best we've ever seen. Just like in 2004, Rossi, by leaps and bounds, was the best we had ever seen. Before that, McDermott. Before that, Agostini, whoever. It's generational. I thought Pedro Acosta would be the next Rossi, Marquez, whoever. But equipment has become so paramount now that those days of a Marquez second race in MotoGP winning, I think those days are long gone until changes are made. But certainly the story of Rossi versus Marquez it's got nothing it's never going to be a win story for either side. So I think it's time people move on. Rossi will always be Valentino Rossi. Just give Marc his credit for what he does on the bike. He does very little off the bike for people to hate him. Yes. People will hate him because he crashed on Sunday and then they red flagged the race for him so he could get on a bike. Come on, guys. You think he's going to crash on lap 2, knowing that lap 3, within the first 3 laps, he gets a free chance, a get out of free jail card? Not one person, and I was watching your Facebook page, not one person highlighted the fact that Aleix and Frankie were allowed to start again. And they were the cause of the red flag. They were allowed to, no, because they weren't Marc Marquez or Alex. It's just luck of the draw sometimes. And yes, it does seem to go his way, but, fortune favors the brave, eh?
Yeah, listen, the pouring fluid out of the crashed bike had nothing to do with the red flag either, which people just seem to forget. But anyway, you know what? Marc and Alex came out and said they were very lucky. The Marquez family was very lucky this weekend. But it's just another thing. Paul, the third cap that I sent back for you is a Valentino Rossi cap, but I didn't get it signed, unfortunately. So
I'll take it with me when I go to the NEC race. What does he race? NEC Championship or whatever.
Okay, Paul. So rounding out the Ducati conversation, a little bit of a blip. Marc made the most of it. Luckily, however you want to look at it, Marc made the best out of it. He beat who he needed to beat. Which is good. I do think it's a rubbish rule, though, regardless of who riders are. Wayne Taylor, I couldn't agree with you more. As I put on the Facebook post, I got caught out by that rule so many times in my racing career where a guy's crashed. I'm now in a very good position, leading or first or second or somewhere, and then the race gets stopped, and I'm like, and the guy lines up next to me on the grid. I'm like, are you joking? I've had it before where 3 laps to go, a rider's crashed, gone, I can manipulate the system here. This was the old rule. They did change it since then. I'm going to lie here and play dead. So the race gets cancelled. Then it goes back a lap and the guy scores points. Then he gets a third and I get a fourth. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's a cut. But it was in the rules. It wasn't like it happened and then they went, okay, let's just write it there. So people can get cross with something and say it was manipulated for the Marquez brothers when it was in the rule book way before the weekend. It's been in the rule book for years. So that's what irritates me, to be honest. But Rounding out the Ducati thing, blip, Marc Marquez got the best out of it. Alex, he beat Alex. Pecco crashed. I want to talk about Pecco. Franco Morbidelli was also lucky thanks to the restart. Yeah, he was, and he made the best out of it. Loved Frankie's. I didn't enjoy Frankie up until his Sunday debrief, which I'll get into later. But Pecco Bagnaia came into his Saturday debrief. Friday debrief was optimistic, saying, "Yeah, it's still not great, but I seem to be making it work better." Type feeling. He broke it down, a little bit differently than that, but that was the message. Saturday came, had a decent qualifying, but let's not forget the Friday he was using a tow. He's got to that point now where I don't have like Mark wasn't on there. I don't have the feeling by myself. I need help. I've got to get a tow. Got a tow from Bezzecchi, put him into Q2, and then from Q2 got onto the front row of the grid. Job done. Cool. Sprint race. Didn't work out for him. Again, the different kind of setups or whatever you choose or how. Another thing that I learned from this weekend from the Zarco, Alicia Spargo debrief on why Zarco can make the Honda work is riders' feeling and the way they can manage or ride over certain problems. Okay, and I think that's where Marc has beaten that's where Marc beat the other Ducati riders on Sunday, for instance. And in other areas, Marc's able to just ride past or manage that bad feeling or those problems better, whereas Pecco can't. Pecco on Saturday, his setup was obviously a lot more maybe front-end orientated or something, worked well, for a few laps, but cooked his tires. So he had nothing left, couldn't really compete, got the best, I think it was 6th or 7th place he finished, whatever. Then the Sunday comes and Pecco's there, gets a decent enough start, not really, and then has this crash. And I agree with Pecco. Pecco sit there and said, look at the footage. Tell me am I going in the corner faster than the guy behind me? If you look closely, I can't remember the rider behind him, if it's Acosta or someone, or Rins. I think it's Rins. I mean, they actually close him, which Pecco's, he's not going stupid fast, not crazy lean angle, and that front just goes, so. And Olimoto, you're right. Pecco's head is gone because you're sitting. He sat there on that Sunday going, "You tell me. You tell me." Yeah, I'm talking with my team, and Gigi and the team are doing their best to try and find a solution for me. And a couple of comments earlier, someone was saying, "Why doesn't he just go back to the GP24?" Well, he can't. He homologated himself on the GP25, so you can't just chop and change bikes. And I don't know how many GP24s Ducati have lying around, but I think they're all being used at the moment. But anyway, this is the bike that he wanted to go with, and I don't want to say it was a dig, but it was certainly a, Gigi and them are really good at solving problems. So it's baffling why they can't solve this one, in a way. Not as direct at that, but in a long kind of way, going these guys are clever and geniuses. Why can't they figure this out? And I agree with Olimoto. I think Pecco, and I mentioned it in the last broadcast. When you're down in the dumps like this, you start questioning everything. You start, did I eat the right breakfast? Oh, it was the way I put my helmet on. And Pecco's in that now. He's in a rut. Pecco's in a rut, and he's got to somehow find a way out of it. Because, and when you're in a rut, things like this happen. So Marc crashes, the race gets restarted. Marc can go, and he benefits and finishes on the podium, gets point. Pecco's luck at the moment is, who knows what would have happened if the race never got restarted. Could have won, could have finished second, would have beaten Marc Marquez.
Yeah.
What happens? Marc restarts, he finishes third, gets points, Pecco crashes. This is just when you are down. It's happened to all of us in life. When you are down, the world and the earth just kicks you in the teeth. And I could see that with Pecco. He's just sitting there going, I know I'm a champion. And he said that, I know my capability. I know, and one of the journalists still asked him a good question. It was, I can't remember what the exact question was, but the answer was, I know my ability. I know who I am, and I know my ability. So I know what to do. We're just not getting it right for now. So we've got to find a solution, but very much still kind of putting the blame, not the blame, but the pressure on Ducati. You guys must fix this. You guys must sort this out. It's on me and I must do things, but you guys must sort this out.
Yeah, Rob, yes and no. I said it possibly in our last broadcast. I think he's now been exposed. And I say that, in terms of when he raced Fabio 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and then 2 years racing Martin. Yeah, he's racing guys who are at the top of their game, but he's not racing against someone who's at the top of his game on equal equipment who might be that 0.5% better than him. So where he could overcome, and we know he lost the championship last year, and I still say he lost the championship more than Martin won it.
Yes.
However, he's in the same situation now, but against an opponent, and we're not even talking about Alex Marquez. We're talking about Mark, someone who mentally I think is stronger, is able to adapt better, whether it's ride around problems or just adapt. I'm not sure which is the correct answer there. He's even forgetting that he's got Alex Marquez 30 odd points ahead of him. He's only focusing, and he's doing, remember I said it a few weeks ago, Jorge Martin 2 years ago said he overanalyzed and focused. I think Pecco's now in that mold. But to what you're saying is his brain's going forwards and backwards and up and down and left and right. He's got to settle down. He can't keep blaming Ducati. I understand. Up until probably 3 races ago, they were doing everything to make him happy. There must be a little bit in Gigi's brain or Davide Tardozzi saying, listen, every other Ducati or Mark and Alex are making this work. Why are you not? You know, so he's getting to a point now where he's going to have to just zip it and let his riding do the talking. Because as you say, if he now gets to a point where every weekend he's changing things, where we know last year, he was the one who said, we have a very good base setting, and then we just go a little bit this way, a little bit that way, depending on the tracks. He's now changing his own philosophy, and that is going to be to his detriment.
David Callahan, very good comment, Jay. If you can only win when everything is perfect, then you are not really that good. Yeah, okay, I don't agree with the really that good, but I agree with him. You've got to be able to adapt and overcome. And again, this is where the debriefs that I heard, that's the biggest difference in different camps, the KTM, the Honda, and that camps, which we'll dive into. One comment that also struck me, Paul, on Saturday after the sprint race, Mark came up to the debrief. And initially I took it at yes, Mark, this is where Mark is so good. He's planted that little comment, that little seed, knowing that it will go out, and it's, I don't want to say a stab at Pecco, but it's a little bit more pressure on Pecco. It's a little bit more. He said, I'm trying to think of the exact words. I don't want to get it wrong, but he basically said, they said, Mark, it's been a challenging weekend so far. You don't look like you've really got going. What's the thing? And he said, to be honest, I have no feeling. I don't have the feeling I want with the bike. I just don't have the feeling I want with the bike. And then, okay, well, what is it? What needs to change? And he's like, what riders must understand is, and not many riders in this paddock understand, and they get it wrong, is you start on a base setup. And then we do all these changes to make the bike better, and we land up at the base setup, and it still hasn't solved the problem. This is when the rider becomes the problem. This is when the rider must learn to ride the bike differently, not change the bike. And this is what I'm going to have to do this weekend, basically. And I looked at that and I went, first of all, it's a good way to think. Okay, well, we've done everything. We've come back here. No more doing this, because we're just, tying ourselves in knots. I'm going to have to just adapt and change things and, break a little early or do whatever. But then it didn't come, he didn't like come across with it puffy, he didn't come like a sneaky little evil laugh with, like a rubbing his, nothing like that. But I just went, that comment could have easily, transpired to Pecco, like exactly what you're saying. Like, okay, well, Pecco, stop blaming Ducati. You're going to have to adjust your style, exactly like the comment that's just been made, David, with a comment with David. Okay, so if things aren't working, okay, so if the bike's not working for you, okay, you're going to keep chasing your tail if you're waiting for this bike to get fixed. Do you change a bit now? Because it's not a KTM situation. It's a lot worse than the KTM. We'll dive into the KTM situation. This is still the bike to be on. This is still the bike that's leading the championship and dominating races. Yes, blip this weekend, but even in a shitty, tough weekend, can still finish on the podium. And Pecco can't get it together. So this is where, again, I agree with you. Pecco needs to maybe just Listen, I love Pecco. I saw Pecco again this weekend. Every person that came, he signed, smiled. People would say, please say hello to my aunt, whose name is Jezebel Mary Godiva. Pecco would take the time and say, sorry, say it to me again, and then he would do the video. I'm like,
yeah.
So he's this incredible human being, this incredible champion who's just in this rut. And like you said, that mind is just churning 24/7. But at the same time, I do think you can't do the scapegoat of, yes, it's up to Ducati to help you for sure. But we're at that point in the season where, okay, Pecco, you chose this direction. Let's not forget, Marc made the decision and the other to GP24. You wanted to go this route. So it's up to you now as well to kind of go, right, cool. What am I doing wrong? Am I hanging off too much? Am I trail breaking too much? Am I, change yourself a little bit now to try and, you're not going to go straight away and win in that, but you can certainly start finishing like he almost was doing at the beginning of the year. The problem is Yamaha, Honda, those kind of guys, the Zarcos and the Quartararos mainly I'm talking about, and the Firmin Aldeguers, and there's more pressure. It's not just Alex and Marc now. And that's another factor he's got to deal with. Okay, I'm not just trying to be two guys here or compete against two guys here. There's a lot more guys and manufacturers that have now come to the playground.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And just going back to a point you made, he chose the direction of the bike. Maybe that's also a reason why, and I don't think he hasn't really implied it, but yes, he has. Maybe he needs to. That's why Ducati are kind of taking a step back and saying, well, this was your decision. You now need to get your shit together and head forward. So I don't know. I do feel sorry for him a little bit because you don't want to see the guy, and he's clearly struggling, but I'm not sure if he's struggling in his head or on the track. It just cannot be easy. First of all, his teammates giving him a proper hiding, but so's I'm going to say an unknown, and let's be quite honest. We've spoken about it every week this year. Alex Marquez is certainly the standout rider in the points. I'm not taking anything away from Fabio, Quartararo, who we're going to discuss, I'm sure, but over the 7 races we've had, certainly the highlight of the year has been Alex Marquez, because last year, he was okay. And we said he needs to prove a point this year. Well, he's done more than that. And that's another little thorn in Pecco's side because, now he's got, and never mind the surname being Marquez, but he's got a Ducati that should never be ahead of him, beating him every single week. So, it's just like we said, it's that additional pressure. And because he's not sure of where he stands in terms of which direction he wants to go, that's another little thing that he needs to resolve. So it's not going to get easier for him, but he's certainly going to have to put his big boy panties on and arrive in Aragon with the mindset that, no, this is not going to get me down. I'm going to get back to where I was. It's going to be a very big, I think, more mental step for him now. And he's at that point where he can't afford another crash because he's giving away points.
Just thanks to Mimi here, you beautiful person. Here's the exact quote. When you try 4 or 5 different setups and you're still slow, the problem is you, not the bike. Not all the riders understand this. For tomorrow, I have to change my riding style. So for me, why throw in the not all the riders understand this?
Yeah.
If it's just meant for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where Marc goes, Gidding.
And Rob, if you take this quote to Zarco, so I'm going to say the 3 Hondas. Let's take Somcat Chantra out of the equation. Take those 3 Hondas. What's he doing so differently to the other 2 guys? Because he's streets ahead of them. So is it a case of he's got the same equipment, he's on a full factory bike, I'm presuming he gets exactly the same upgrades or changes that are available that they can have, or vice versa. Yet he's the one who's bringing in the results. So is it also a case that in terms of the way the Honda works, he just knows how to override or adapt a little bit better to get a little bit, stop the chatter, well, they don't have chatter. They have a lot of vibration. I'm not too sure what the difference is. I know what chatter is, but when they say vibration, maybe you can explain. But maybe that's something where Zarco is able to adapt, and Mir and Marini, to a lesser degree, just can't do what he can do. And that's why you see him, he's quite a long way ahead of them at the moment.
I'm going to quickly touch upon this comment with Sven. Strongly disagree on this point. So all other riders must change to suit their bikes. So all bikes are winners, just the riders not riding them correctly. And I can understand your argument there, Sven, but if I look at Toprak as an example, climbed on the Yamaha when it wasn't ready, could make the Yamaha win. Other Yamaha riders can't or couldn't, including Johnny Rayner. Climbs on the BMW, the only BMW that's performing. There's only 2 BMWs out there. Toprak's the only one. So to me, the rider and how he makes it work is the best. Casey Stoner, pointing at Ducati all those years ago, won the world title, dominated. Everyone else after that on the Ducati couldn't make it work. So this kind of leads perfectly into your point as well now, Paul, with Zarco and how is he? On Sunday, Aleix Espargaro, who was a test rider and a wildcard rider, was asked, so how is Zarco getting it so much better than the other guys, Mir and Marinis, who have improved, showed good improvement as well, but why is he able to be on a podium and win races and they can't? And Aleix said, looking at the data, Zarco is able to manage and ride over the vibration or the chatter the best. He doesn't feel it. Literally, he doesn't feel it. Other guys feel it, and your natural reaction when you feel chatter at some point is to react and pick the bike up. Aleix, that's what I do. I feel it, and you don't trust it, so you pick it up. Zarco's obviously got this feeling, this belief, this something that he can go, okay, well, bike, I trust you. I'm just going to lean you more. I'm going to push you more. I'm just going to do more. And again, Sven, this is where I agree that even a good rider can make a shit bike fast, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, there is the flip side of the coin where shit bike can make a good rider look shit, which is what's happening with KTM at the moment. With all due respect to KTM, I'll talk about it just now. But that is the biggest thing, and that is where Marquez so far, because it's been an up and down season. Jeez, there's been mistakes left, right, and center. Sunday was another kind of another indication of there's still plenty to race for this year. But there are those riders that can just manage situations slightly better. Is Pedro Acosta doing it at KTM compared to others? Maverick Vinales did it better at Qatar compared to the others, So there are always going to be those little standout points. And Pecco, we've seen it in the past. When things go Pecco's way, and once he's spent that Friday and a bit of Saturday setting the bike up to exactly how he wants it, you can't touch the guy. Cannot touch the guy. But when it's not, Pecco does struggle, and that's just riders. Some riders just have those attributes. All the ducks have to be lined up for me to get it right. Lorenzo, in a way, was kind of like that guy. Rossi could do the complete opposite. Rossi could override anything. Marc, in a way, could override anything. So, to your Honda question, Zarco, according to Aleix, is just able to manage and override the chatter problems compared to Mir and them who can't. And then to Sven's point, I agree, but more disagree with you, because I do think the rider makes more of the difference, and adapting themselves to a bike can be beneficial and will work better than the other way around, if you know what I mean. A good rider can make a shit bike go faster. I know vice versa, but I think that way's better.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to Zarco quickly. Do you think he has the mentality of win it or bin it kind of mentality? Or is it genuinely an ability to read what the bike is doing, trust himself, his ability, and the bike's ability, where, as your example said, a guy like Aleix is, as soon as he gets that chatter and the vibration, he's rolling off or picking the bike up a little bit, where, does that come down to Zarco's mentality of, I don't know, I'm either going to win or crash, or it's actually a proper feeling thing? And that's what I've always felt with guys like Rossi, Marc Marquez. They've got a feeling, and I put Pedro Acosta one notch below those two. They've got a feeling that they just have 0.1% better than all the other guys. That's why they can, Marc Marquez can save at 60-degree lean angle, because he just catches it at that vital point where, let's just say, Aleix Espargaro, by the time he realizes it's too late. So I don't know. It's that to me is the personal touch, that personal whatever it is that those guys have got that separate the Mark from the Alex from this year, the Pecco. I don't know what it is. I just think Zarco, I'm still a little bit, I'm delighted for the guy, but I'm just still on edge that he's got this win it or bin it mentality. And because he's had 2 great results, I hope we don't see him going forward running in the front and knowing he's a little bit out of his depth and saying, oh, well, I'll ride it till I crash it. I hope he now starts thinking, yeah, I'm in third, for example, let's finish in third. I don't know. To me, his mindset, and I remember going back to when he was on the Tech 3 Yamaha, his first year in MotoGP at America, just bombing underneath anyone through that turn 2, 3, 4 section. He was wild. And I think that can sometimes be his mentality. So I agree with Aleix, but I'm worried that it's a win it or bin it situation with Zarco. And so far it's worked for him. But maybe that just shows how good the turning on the Honda actually is.
I think he just has the feeling with that particular package. I agree with you that word feeling was actually used. He's got the feeling to be able to manage and ride past the problems of the bike, which is the vibration and the chatter, compared to the other guys. That's pretty much how it was summed up by Aleix. And I agree with you. I know he's got that win it or bin it. I think he's got to that point in his career where he knows, I'm not going to be an overall championship contender, really. So I'm going to take the wins where they are, And if it means I don't, if it works out for me, Le Mans, great. If it doesn't, I'm on the deck. So be it. No one really expects me to go and win championships and stuff. So I'm going to go result by result by result type thing. Definitely the feeling. I agree with you 100% on that. And I agree with you in many ways that Pedro's, got that feeling that maybe gives him a little edge in certain situations. So it was. I mean, if I think about Marini, I like Marini again. I can see the value in Marini because how he can process and communicate problems and stuff with the team. I can see him as being the fact that he comes out and he's still saying, no, we're talking about me extending my contract. I kind of go, geez, but how's that possible if there's a Top Rack and a Martin available and maybe a Pecco Bagnaia available, and this is where I think Di Giannantonio might fall short as well, is there's these names that are easily dispensable, like easily, okay, well, thanks, but cheers. I see Marini and Digi as one of them. Digi, sadly, I feel for, because I think he can, and he is doing a great job, podium on Saturday or whatever, but if an Acosta comes calling, it's, thanks, Digi, here's your free bottle of wine, but cheers, you need to make space more for this, So I can see Marini's value within that Honda project and why they would want to keep him, because he speaks so well, he talks a game. He had a good showing this weekend. I think he gives valuable information, and I think he can translate it in a way that the team can use it. I don't get that feeling from Jean Mir. Jean Mir is very much, not me, looks like a nice guy personally, but certainly in that debrief, it's no, not me. On the Saturday, it was like, yeah, I need to see the data from my team, because my team have got some explaining to do, because how can this happen? How can we have a good feeling on Friday and everything's fine, we change nothing, and now it's not fine? How can this happen? And this again goes to, the Sven argument. So there was Jean Mir leading the times at one point on Friday, loving the bike, loving life, looking all good. Saturday is nowhere. But no, it's the bike's fault. No, it's the bike's fault. It's not my fault, it's the bike's fault. So those kind of things you pick up in those debriefs, again, I talk about body language and how they communicate things, where Mir was very much like that. Zarco is very much like, just looks like he's happy to still be riding, to be honest. He's like, I'm just happy in a way. I'm still here. I'm loving what I'm getting. I'm loving my team environment. Yes, the bike's got these problems, but I work around them and I ride around them to get myself into this position. So those kind of things you pull apart from the debriefs, and the Honda exercise is definitely one that's on the up. I think Aleix did say, he feels proud with Zarco's results because he's been a part of that, and I think kudos to him. He has been a part of that, because since he's come in, the bike and the package has improved, as also with the new management and staff that have come in the background, the technical guy and everything. But yeah, that process is good, and Zarco is certainly. Look, we've also got to remember. Let's say Sunday comes and everyone goes on soft fronts. Is Zarco on the podium? Then a Marc is a different story, an Alex is a different story, a Pecco is a different story, a Furman's a different story. All the Ducatis are. DJ Antonio, who was on the podium on Saturday, is a different story. So I'm not saying it was lucky by any means. They made the right decision and they deserve the podium, but it's easily to overhype it because the Ducatis made the wrong choice and weren't at their best, if you know what I mean. And anyways, Honda were at their best. So,
but Rob, I think that highlights the point that MotoGP now is so competitive.
Yeah.
And yes, we know it's being dominated by Ducati for the last 3 seasons. So when they do have an off weekend, you have to take advantage of it, which Fabio Quartararo most certainly did. Bezzecchi most certainly did. Zarco most certainly did. Other guys who should have taken advantage of it were unable to. So all credit to them when they saw the foot in the door to take a gap. Boy, they did it. And if Ducati made the wrong call on the tire, that's their issue. It's got nothing to do with the 3 guys who beat Ducati. And I put Quartararo in that 100% because had he not had a technical issue, nobody would have seen him. Of that, there's no doubt. He was watching the gap. He was maintaining it. But that's motor racing, things do go wrong. But it just highlights how competitive it is. And when you get a chance to get a result, boy, you have to grab it with both hands and make it count, which, as I say, Zarco, Bezzecchi, they did that on the weekend, and all credit to them.
So Sven says, if it's just the riders must change, why do they set up bikes or even develop bikes in riders' preference? If it was the case, they should just build bikes and tell the riders to go out and win. So my reply to that, Sven, is the GP24 is the greatest MotoGP that's ever been designed and created. And any rider that climbs on that has got an advantage and goes and performs. So again, Alex Marquez is for me not a better rider than a Brad, a Maverick, maybe a Pedro, a Pecco, but he's on this bike that he's now gelled with and given him the tools to now go perform, that he feels comfortable and can go perform. Pecco Bagnaia dominated on a GP24. He's not getting on with a GP25. So Marini was podium and pole positions on a Ducati. No, you can't do it on a Honda. Brad Binder, Pedro Acosta, Maverick Vinales, Bastianini won both races last year on a Ducati. Now he's suffering on this KTM. In that argument, I agree. Brad and Pedro and them can go change their riding style as much as they want. They'll get a little bit more out of the KTM, but the KTM is just cock. The perfect example is a GP24 Ducati. So why is Marc or Alex in this case consistently beating Pecco? Because the GP24 bike suits Alex and is able to perform the way he wants to, compared to the 23 where he was nowhere near as competitive as this. The GP24 Pecco could ride the way he wanted to. Many can say that bike was developed for him. And he could go out and get the results that he wanted. And Jorge Martin just loved it. It's the same with Martin on the Aprilia. He hasn't even really given it a shot, so we can't really talk much about that exercise, but he would have to do the same. You can't, and Bezzecchi's learning this. Bezzecchi said in his debrief, you have to forget about Ducati. I've got to forget everything about Ducati. I can't go, oh, this bike's not feeling good. The Ducati did this. As soon as you do it, game over.
Yeah.
Game over. Bezzecchi's got to go. I'm on an Aprilia now. I've got to ride this thing like an Aprilia. If that means I've got to change my riding style, I've got to change my riding style. And the biggest going into this weekend, speaking to the other journalists, the ones that I like, the ones that I really take good knowledge from, the biggest problem with Bezzecchi on the Aprilia was he was trying to ride it like a Ducati. Brake late, deep into the corner. The Ducati settles itself and just goes where you want it to go. You can't do that on the Aprilia. You've almost got to brake earlier. It's GP 250 days. Brake a bit earlier, carry the corner speed. That's why the Aprilia just works at certain tracks, and at some tracks it's just nowhere. Bezzecchi has been nowhere up until now. He gets to Silverstone where Aleix Espargaro has won on Aprilia and he wins. Okay, again, maybe you could say the fact that they were all on soft and the Ducati, fine. But there's a perfect example of, okay, well, you've got to wipe the slate clean and you've got to ride this thing differently. So a rider is more effective than anything. You've got to learn it, and that's why I think Marc made that statement. I think it was a little dig at Pecco, but it's true in many ways. Is that I did it? You go, oh, it's not me. It's not. Change the bike. Oh, by the way, you're back at setting number one.
Yeah.
And that same setting is Sheridan's setting, and he's 3 seconds faster than you and winning races. Okay, clearly I'm braking too hard, too late. I'm turning in the bike, too much lean angle for you know what I mean. So for me, I think it's more mentally than set up for sure. Andre Calfert, a happy rider, is a fast rider on any bike or any team. So yeah, I understand where Sven's coming from, because it is a blend. It is definitely a blend. You got to have a good mixture there. But I do lean more towards the side of the rider's got to make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when the call for the direction you take in the bike was made by you. You know, now you need to take accountability, if that's the right word. If that's what was done and he's now kind of not so happy, well, you got to live with it. Unfortunately, we're in a MotoGP racing world where rules are set at the beginning of the year and homologation takes place, and then you kind of stuck with your finger where you don't want it. So you adapt and move on, or you cry. And right now he needs to not cry, he needs to adapt.
Robert Mackey, let's go on to this subject, because it is a nice little talking point. Can we touch upon Morbidelli? How many penalties is he going to get? Blah, blah, blah. You know, typical Morbidelli, Paul, just lost scope. Again, after that moment on Friday, I was just like, was it Friday?
Yeah.
Friday.
Or
anyway,
Saturday morning.
Yeah, he got in the way of Bezzecchi, a good mate of his. You know, he's done it to Pecco, now done it to Bezzecchi, and stupidly gets in the way. Sits up in a left-hander when there's a right-hander coming. Anyway, that's Loscorp Morbidelli. At that point, I was like, this guy. Even his debriefs, I've said it before, he doesn't. You know, the other guys talk with a bit of passion and like, you know, and Morbidelli sometimes seems to me like he doesn't want to be there. You know, I just happen to be fast on a bike, that's why I'm here. Until Sunday, I must say. And I don't know if the whole incident of crashing and the Leish thing and their argument kind of just, you know, got his testosterone going or whatever. And we saw this, because let's be honest, he was dicing with Leish Espargaro near the back when he crashed. And then he lands up in a podium battle with Marc Marquez in the second part of the race, you know. So what changes? And I think it's just that adrenaline pumping. But it's a big problem for Franco, and you know, it needs to get to a point where, cool, you've had enough penalties now, and instead of just a long lap penalty, it's actually just a race weekend ban. You know, you really somehow need to get into this guy's head. You know, it's a case of when you're trying to teach your puppy to not wee in the house, and after 2 years and tapping this dog on the bum 100 million times and saying, don't do that, you eventually got to go, listen, dog. You know what I mean? He has a proper hiding. Now you're going to sleep outside tonight, type thing. I mean, it's a bad explanation, but there's got to be more repercussion to try and get into this guy's head.
Well, when I saw that happen, I thought, okay, now you're in trouble, because he's not a first-time offender. And then when we heard, what do you get, a 3-place penalty, 3 grid, I was like, no, come on, Simon. That at least deserved a long lap penalty. I think he should have actually got a ride-through penalty because he's a serial offender. Had it been a first or even second offense, and it's the exact same offense, it's not like he gets in the way, then the next time I don't know what else he could be doing, but it's the exact same. This must be his 4th time. So he got off very lightly. I'm going now to the actual race. Yeah, he certainly, you know, and on your Facebook website, Motor Rider World Facebook page, it's all the hate that came when Marc crashed and then they restarted. I think, you know, the luck fell in the Marquez brothers' way. The converse is happening with Frankie, that when poo happens, it's Leish. And I mean, Leish doesn't, I mean, when was it, 2 years ago, Leish slapped him on the head. And so I think he just overreacted, Morbidelli. Like Leish said, and I'm not taking Leish's side by any means, but he did say, listen, there's no ways I'm going to crash and on purposely aim my bike to take you out. But I understand the heat of the moment. I think Leish was over exuberant into the corner. It was 100% his fault, but the way Morbidelli reacted, and I don't know if you saw it, if you were watching on the TV when they showed his eyes, man alive, those things would have arc welded aluminium for you. Anyway, so I think you're quite right, Rob. Then he got back and he was like, no ways am I going to be anywhere near that clown at the back of this grid. I'm going to make sure if I'm going to get tagged, I want to get tagged by Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, someone who's racing for the win. And as you say, he raced Marquez in the last lap and a half, 2 laps. He raced him till the very end. He didn't give up. He didn't give him a one front wheel wonder. He raced him hard to the end. Where did that come from?
So, I mean, first of all, going back to the Leish kind of said in his debrief, it was my fault. I went in too fast, too much brake, and I tucked the front, and I happened to hit Morbidelli. And then, what was said, I got up and, he was throwing his hands or whatever. And I said, listen, it wasn't on purpose. I tucked the front and I crashed and I took you out. And then Morbidelli said, it's always you on me. And anyway, that whole argument happened. So for Leish, there's no good relationship there, but he was kind of like, Morbidelli can think what he wants, kind of like, I don't care, I'm retired type thing, cheers. Morbidelli was like, no, this guy, I don't know what it is with this guy, but he sees me and he wants to take me out. That's plain and simple. He says he sees me and he does. Well, I mean, Morbidelli basically said he was stupid because he's here as a wild card and he's trying to race against us and he tries to pull the stupid move and then it happens to me and it would happen to me. It would happen to me. But anyway, then I told him what. Anyway, I don't like the guy. Kind of that kind of message. I don't like the guy. But then he said, luckily he's not going to be here for the rest of the year. But like this very shrewd, I wish I could record these things. They really need to, I would love them just to record those debriefs, and then put them out there because it's amazing to see. Like I said, that the facial expressions and the mannerisms and stuff. But anyways, luckily I don't have to deal with him. It's like Godfather, luckily I don't have to deal with this guy. It was brilliant. But then I asked him and I said, Frankie, well done. And Olimoto, I agree with you. Frankie's had a great season up until now, and he's looking good and stuff. But he's just got to avoid those stupid things. And I still think there's going to be weekends where he's going to float. Like the Silverstone weekend, up until Sunday, he was floating. He was nowhere really in qualifying. He was nowhere really in practice. Again, I was at the paddock and I had to remind, oh, geez. Even in the debrief, it was like, oh, geez, here comes Morbidelli. Geez, don't forget about Morbidelli. Then he puts that race on like on Sunday, and then you're like, that's the Frankie. This is the Frankie we know. And I said to Frankie, honestly, first of all, where did it come from? Second of all, I was sitting there. Some of your moves, I kind of like gripped my friend in the couch, biting the couch because I just saw the front end tucking and you taking Mark out something. And he said, you and me both. Nice little giggle. And that was the first time I'd really seen, first of all, the luckily is not here type thing. And then you and me both. That was the first bit of kind of, like, I don't know, humor and excitement.
Human side to him,
Not just like, the bikes, it's just like this guy, I have to be here, so ask me whatever questions you want. There was a bit of interaction and we were all excited. Like, geez, Frankie's interaction. And he was like, I gave everything. If I look back now, I would change things and I'd manage it a bit better. Like some of my passes, I could have done a bit better and got a better result. But man, I'm happy. And it almost I'm keen to see if Frankie can take that debrief, how he ended that debrief into the rest of the year. Because if we get that Frankie, we've got a title challenger. Pecco's got another to worry about properly every weekend because he was like, that was fun. I haven't had that much fun like in a long time. To battle with an 8-time world champion like that, I lost out, but he's an 8-time world champion. Yeah. And I was like, that's what I said. As from the start of the weekend, as it went on, I was like, okay, Frankie. Okay, Frankie. After that, I was like, okay, Frankie, where's your merch stand?
Boy.
I'm going to go buy a cap and get you to sign a cap and send it to my mate Paul in South Africa. That's what's going to
happen. The problem I have with him is on Friday when Honda announced that Alicia's going to be a wild card in Aragon in 10 days time, it's just going to drain the blood out of that poor guy and he's going to be like, no, not again. Put extra padding in my leathers, pump the airbag up already because I know what's going to happen. No, joke. I don't think that's going to happen with Aleix coming back. But yeah, good to hear that, Rob, to know that there is a human side to him, and let him get a bit fired up, which we know not everybody is like that, and not everybody can be like that. But good to know that he himself said, "This is what I want to be doing." It's kind of, that's the spirit stuff.
Here we go, Ollie Moti, and I had my Frankie fan club shirt on. Just saying, watching the battle between Frankie and Marc was brilliant. It was absolutely fantastic. Exactly what us fans demand from MotoGP. Again, Silverstone, say what you will about it off track. On track, it always promotes good racing, and it was fantastic. That battle was fantastic. I know Marc, I don't think, was pleasantly happy, because I think he knew there was more potentially out of the weekend, but he got the most out of the weekend. But yeah, I hope Frankie just takes that spark into the rest of the season. I hope that kickstarts him. He's had a good start to the season, but I hope that puts him on another level, and we get that more interactive, vibrant Frankie, because there's a great personality there. It just needs to come out a little bit more. Paul, I'm gonna switch over to, I'm just trying to think of any other real, before I get into KTM, because it's a big talking point. DG was good debriefs, very happy with Saturday as well. You just can't help but get that feeling with DG. And I don't know if it's an every single race thing, but it's just, I'm just happy to still be here. And when I perform, it's great. The Saturday he was like, my biggest strength is management of tires, and I did that on Saturday, and it got me on the podium. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to everyone. Yes, which is great. And then Sunday comes and he was like, we were in a boxing match this weekend and just didn't have the feeling. I got stuck at the start, and this and this and this and this and this and this, and it just wasn't my weekend. Kind of why I think he's a name that we've seen it in the past. His MotoGP career has been saved in the past, but he's that name that is good, but I think could be one of the first, now with everything that's going on with Martin sparking things and Pecco, one of the names that could be, okay, thanks DG, but we'll rather have this guy, even though you've been beating him, even though you're beating this guy, cheers, but thanks. So that was interesting to hear and see. And DJ Antonio, Fermin Aldeguer was good to talk to. Speaks well, especially for a rookie. I was impressed with him. I said to him, "You're getting this feeling right. Obviously, you came straight into Silverstone, a very tricky track, and straight away, first time at Silverstone on a MotoGP bike, and straight away you're able to go quite fast." He said, "Yeah, I got a very good feeling now with the bike. I know what the bike wants to do. I know the tracks already before I get to the race meeting. I can feel how the bike's going to be at this track in the corners in my mind, and a lot of it works. I've got to change a couple of things, but it's feeling really good." He did suffer from arm pump. He said this was the hardest race weekend of my MotoGP career so far, because I said to him, you kept running wide and stuff. Was it a braking problem? Was it the medium front tire? And he said, a bit of the medium front tire, but more so I just had arm pump and I just couldn't stop the bike the way that I wanted. So yeah, good to be able to speak face to face with Fermin Aldeguer. I think we've all been impressed with him, and I think there's a lot more to come from him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's certainly, after round one where he didn't have a great weekend, and Ayagura had a fantastic weekend, I thought Fermin was going to have his hands full to be Rookie of the Year, but he's just got better and better and better, and he's on a bike that he's learning how to utilize what the bike will do for him, and certainly his results are going to be steady top six. I think he is going to get a couple more podiums. He's already had one. I think there a couple more on the cards for him, but we forget the light. He's only 20 or 19. I don't even think he's turned. He's just turned 20, because this was his last weekend to break Marc's record, which he clearly didn't do. But I think he's very impressive, and he's showing a maturity. He's riding, I'm going to say, within himself. Obviously, they're all riding 99%. It's when you go over that, and being a rookie, you don't want to take chances. You don't want to get injured. And I really feel sorry for Ayagura, because I love him to death. He had a nasty, very fast crash. I'm sure you saw the replays. And unfortunately, it sounds like he's fractured his tibia. So, that's one of his leg bones at the bottom. That's going to put him out for certainly a couple of race meetings. But anyway, yeah. So, Fermin, nice to hear you saying good things about the kid, because I think he's certainly doing justice to the contract that he signed 18 months ago, and then had, by his standards, a shocking year last year.
We're going to talk about Fabio. So there's Fabio, Yamaha, there's Aprilia, Bezzecchi, and Martin, and then there's the KTM. So we've still got a lot. Stay tuned. We've still got a lot to talk about on the Trackhouse Aprilia and Ayagura. Just again, being in the paddock, this is how much marketing kind of works, and teams keeping themselves relevant and everything. And a little gripe I have with some of the riders is they don't do enough. This is where Jack Miller thrives. Even though he's not doing well on track, off track, he promotes himself to keep him alive, to keep him in your thought process. And that Jack is still, you get there, and Jack is a big talking point. Even in the media debriefs, Jack is Jack. You know, you've got fans everywhere, and it's Jack. It's Jack Miller. You're like, okay, well, it doesn't set the world alight, but anyway, but it's Jack Miller. You know, so but Trackhouse are doing this thing now where they invite all the journalists for Sunday morning breakfast. So we all got the message the Saturday night on the WhatsApp group saying, please join us for a full English breakfast in the Trackhouse. Sweet. Free food for one South African who was with me, and another South African in the UK now. Full English breakfast, beautiful. So we get there pouring with rain, but in this lovely hospitality having breakfast. But then I was speaking to Maria, who's the PR lady, and I'm like, this is very clever, because you're not getting much coverage on track. So the best way to get coverage is off track, and this kind of thing gets you coverage, because all of a sudden, myself included, we're all posting about this beautiful breakfast in Trackhouse. All the journalists, every single one posted about this, free breakfast in Trackhouse, making it relevant. So that's the power, and that's the clever kind of things that get done in the paddock that you sometimes don't see on the outside. Is those little things. Oh, come have a breakfast here. Eyes out. Raul's not doing well, but come have a breakfast with us and just put a picture.
We're still here. We're still here.
Yeah, exactly. So getting onto Yamaha quickly. Fabio Quartararo was a big talking point. Jack Miller. Someone's asked Sean Hepburn, why does Jack always get up front in the opening laps and then fades away almost every race? So Sean, there's a pretty simple answer to that. Jack, I think, rides a bike really hard. I've said it before, you put a soft tire on the front of Jack Miller's machine, he's going to compete. He thrives on that. And a soft tire is a lot harder to manage than others. The biggest gripe for him on a KTM was very rarely could they run a soft tire, and there was a lot more management involved on a KTM than now on a Yamaha, which he couldn't handle. Again, you could argue that Sunday, his good performance and his good result was more down to the lack of Ducati's performance with the medium fronts. But either way, he was still there, showcased that the Yamaha can be competitive. At the end of the day, he was the leading Yamaha after Fabio got out. But I definitely think it was, I don't want to say blown up, but there were factors that helped him get there. But I think that's going to be a theme with Jack, and it always has been. He's certainly a ridiculously fast rider and talented rider. We know that. The management side, I think, most of the time lets him down. But it was great catching up with Jack. Got to spend a little bit of time with him, with Brad, fortunately. And good news for Jack, he'll be racing at Suzuka 8-hour for Yamaha as well. So another thing that he's very excited about. I just wonder if that's like a pre-test on a World Superbike, maybe, with all these rumors that are going on for his potential seat in that Pramac setup. If this is a potential, go see how World Superbike feels. Johnny Ray's not doing for us in World Superbikes. Go feel how Yamaha feels, and we'll see how you go.
Yeah, listen, Jack certainly had a great weekend, and as much as you say it's because of the lack of Ducatis, like I said with Zarco and Bezzecchi, he grabbed the opportunity and he made the most of it. Certainly Jack is, for whatever reason, he's very relevant in the paddock. But in my thinking, and I'm going to stick to my feelings, I said it the whole of last year, and I don't think he deserves to be there. And I say that he's been there a long time. His results don't speak as of a now Alex Marquez, a Frankie Morbidelli, So my opinion, if he does get moved out of Yamaha, I think it is time. He's having a great season. And if he stays, he's earned it. There's no doubt about that up until now. But I do think that it's time for him to move on. And I don't believe there'll be anywhere else for him to go. Whatever happens to him, he's certainly, as you said, he's made himself very relevant. And he had a great weekend. For once, he didn't crash, which is, it is, I say that once again, all due respect. Normally, Jack third or fourth, works his way steadily back down to 10th, and then he falls over. This weekend, so whatever the conditions and it just seemed to be something he could adapt to. A big highlight to me was 3 Yamahas in Q2 straight away. Only Oliveira didn't make it. That just shows that there's potential. I did say to someone on Saturday night, listen, Quartararo now has to stop being a one-lap wonder and put it together for 19, 20, 21 laps. Well, he certainly did that on Sunday. Unfortunately, modern technology tripped him up a little bit, and I felt desperately sorry for him. But yeah, he certainly showed that on a track where it's fast and flowing, the Yamaha is certainly about to be reckoned with.
So yeah, just to touch upon that point for everyone that didn't see, obviously his ride-out device failed, so the back kind of just got stuck down. We've seen it in the past before with Maverick Vinales at Sachsenring, I think it was. There were a couple of instances at Le Mans, especially into turn 1 with the ride-out devices. A lot of the debriefs, all the riders were pretty much asked, there's been a couple of cases. Bastianini's in the sprint race or Sunday's race, I can't remember, but his device got stuck down for the first half a lap or something. So there's been...
I'm sure Brad's had it once as well.
Yeah, Brad's. I think every rider
at
some point had this. So obviously it was a big talking point of, are you guys looking forward to 27 when all this stuff's gone? A lot of the sentiments were yes, but it's Alicia Spargo was like, yeah, I've never liked this thing. You'll never ever see it on a road going production bike. So I don't know why we have it here. Then there was the other side of guys saying, no, it doesn't happen that often. When it does happen, it's a shame, but it doesn't fail as often as we think it does. So no, we're fine with it, but yeah, bring on the 2027 rules. It's no problem. So anyway, Fabio's ride-out device went down. The thing I got from all the Yamaha riders, and I know Wayne Taylor was talking earlier about forget about Miller, what about Oliveira? It was very much, I spoke to Oliveira because I have a good relationship with Miguel. I was honest with him. It's like, in your mindset riding around this weekend, how much was actually racing and how much was, adapting to the Yamaha and getting to feel better and stuff? And he was like, a lot of it was that, because I have to be realistic. I don't want to crash again, first of all, and I'm not in a position to go race. So yeah, what makes Oliveira indispensable is the Portuguese passport, the flag, and the support that he comes with as well, which is the biggest thing he's got in his corner. He's got a 2-year contract with that team. Miller's got a 1-year contract. That can all be changed. Everything can be changed now with Pedro Acosta, Pecco Bagnaia, and Jorge Martin kind of making themselves available. All contracts mean absolutely nothing now. To buy a rider out of a 2 million contract is very easily done. Marc shook everything up by making that move from Honda to Ducati, because what has it proven? Make the right career choice to be on the right bike. You can you can go compete again, and that's what they all want to do. But anyway, the biggest kind of thing I got from the Yamahas, and we kind of know it, but it was sealed in blood in those debriefs, is if we can go out and ride our own lines in fresh air with no Ducati bombing us on the inside and stopping at mid-turn, and we can be stupid fast. And that's what happened with Fabio in that sprint race. Yes, in the Sunday race. Yes, he had the soft tire on, but you still got to make it work. And he was gone. The guy was gone. He was gone. I couldn't believe it. Eventually, I was watching like going, God, is this guy still in the race? He's gone. And that is the Yamaha's strength. I think Sven commented earlier, Silverstone, it's not completely start-stop. There's 1 or 2 hardish braking sections, but it's more fast-flowy. Ideal for Yamaha. So that played into their end, plus the fact that they made the right choice with the soft front tire compared to medium and an end. But Fabio Quartararo, when you look at that, you go, someone was asking earlier, who's Ducati's biggest rival? It's not even Yamaha or KTM or Honda. It's Fabio Quartararo. Fabio Quartararo. He proved it again this weekend. He was so ridiculously fast. And I watch on the side of the track as well, and you can see it's clear as day when Fabio's by himself. My God, and he's got that slightly different line. And when I say slightly different line, it's millimeters. It's braking earlier but carrying the speed in for longer, turning in a bit later. Not having to. The Ducati's Marc turns the bike in a bit earlier, gets it stopped, but then uses the drive and the ride height device to get out. The KTMs are a little bit all over the show, to be honest. You can see the KTM's failings from trackside. It's right there. Bezzecchi looked fantastic. You could see where Marc is faster on the Ducati than the other Ducatis in the riding style and stuff. So love it. Love seeing those kind of things on the side of the track. But Fabio Quartararo in that kind of rhythm is unstoppable. And he was proving it in that Sunday race. And I don't know if there was a dry tear in the whole of Silverstone when that bike broke, and that scene of him on his hands and knees. You know what? When he came into MotoGP, my biggest gripe with Quartararo was you've got to keep your emotions in check, Machano. This mudding your visor off and punching your screen when you didn't get a pole position lap or something happened. You can't be doing that, my bud. Plenty of bad's going to happen to you in your career. You've got to learn to manage it. And he's done that. To his credit, he did that and he became a worthy world champion. There's no doubting it. Then I looked at that and I went, there's a kid that just wears his heart on his sleeve. You know what I mean? At some point, no matter how much you try and keep your emotion in check and whatever, it's got to hurt. And seeing that took a part of all of us, I think. And then in that media debrief, I'll try and send you a link. Someone posted a video of what we got to saw in the media debrief, exactly like what I wish you could all see. Someone recorded this debrief and somehow got to put it out, because you're not allowed doing that. You're absolutely not allowed doing that. So I don't know how they did it. But the question was asked by Dave Emmett, despite everything, whatever, does this give you hope? And Fabio started answering, and then he just broke down into tears. And I promise you, it was awkward, obviously, but it was so emotional. Standing around this kid that gives it his all, gives it his all. Sometimes I know we can be critics on the outside and say, you must do this and this and this. The guy gives it his all. He certainly was giving it his all that weekend. Was doing everything right. And that's what he said afterwards. I was managing everything right. Bezzecchi was closing the gap. I had it all. Everything was under control. And then to be taken out of control like that. But when those tears started coming, oh man, it was so emotional, and you couldn't help but just feel for the guy and just really hope that he gets what he deserves sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And they highlighted it on the commentary. We get to say something like 2.5 seasons that he hasn't won a race, and Yamaha, he was the last Yamaha to win. It was one of those things where he wears his heart on his sleeve anyway, and you felt so when we saw those pictures of him on the side of the track, you just knew the poor kid was heartbroken, sobbing his eyes out. But I think a very big he'll certainly take lots of positives out of that. But when he walked past Massimo Rivola, and you saw Rivola put his arm around him when he walked back into the pits and just said to him, listen, and it was obviously after the race, he said, you won the race. We get the trophy, but you won the race. That's the sportsmanship and the camaraderie amongst them. However, the emotional side, especially not being on a Ducati with his level of ability, wins are few and far between. To kind of, he had one hand and 4 fingers on the winning trophy, and then the bike breaks. Different story if he had made a mistake and crashed. But the bike breaks, it's heartbreaking. But I think there a lot of positives out of the Yamaha camp at the moment. And a little bit one thing I saw, I think it was Miller got passed by Morbidelli. I can't remember. I think it was in Sunday's race. The speed difference down the hanger straight between the Duke and the Yamaha. But then they go through that Beckett's, that section. Man, Miller just closed him like he was standing still. But then they just lose out on whether, I think it's the drive. As opposed to top speed, because when you look at the top speeds, they're not 2 or 3 Ks off. When you're in the draft, shouldn't make a difference, but certainly that Yamaha and that fast flowing section was just in a league of its own.
Paul, I can tell you now, again, standing trackside, all those bikes are fast. There's no doubt about it. The Yamaha handles better in faster turns, and that Aprilia has its strengths in that. The Ducati's biggest strength is coming out of the turns. When the other bikes, so we were watching, if you watch like that last chicane and then the right hander onto the front straight, there's not many great viewing points. I'm going to have to definitely go with Olimoto next time, because in the paddock you're very restricted. So if you go watch there, and then in the next turn 1 and 2 and into that hairpin, you can get a bit of that as well. But especially when that Ducati's leant over and they start asking for the power, that Ducati goes, whoa, and then you can hear it as they're bringing it up off Renegade, that Ducati's driving. Poof, that thing just, there's no, there's nothing interfering. That thing just gets up and goes. So you can hear that transition. Other bikes, it just doesn't release that power as smoothly as the Ducatis. Clear as day, you can hear it and see it visually on the Ducati. So that is where, as I said, when you watch Fabio, that corner speed, you watch him coming into the chicane on the brakes, and I was like, it's very cute, Fabio. It's very nice, my bud. I'm going to stand here and wait for one of your pieces of your bike to fly to me and grab it, and I've got a piece of your heart. You're not going to make the corner, my bud. There's no ways. And then he goes, poof, 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 poof. Huh? The Ducati does it. They all do it fast. The Ducati just does it slightly differently with a line, but you can see Marc goes, I don't need Yamaha corner speed, my bud. That's very cute. You do that.
Yeah.
But as soon as I get on the gas, I'm out of here. And Marc does that. He gets into the turn. He's got that perfect blend of speed, stops it in mid-turn, and then just gets on that gas, and he's got a bike that just lets him get on the gas and drive it out. Now it's just there. It's clear as day. So I agree with you. And well, that's how I said. The Yamaha testament was, get out of our way and we can be fast. If there's bikes in our way, we've got trouble. But anyway, another good sign for Yamaha, another great sign for Fabio Quartararo. The V4 engine is going to be tested at Aragon. A lot of things, last year I was talking like, if things stay the way they did, and we said big changes needed to happen, and thankfully they did. Things stayed the way they did. Yamaha aren't going to get out of this. They're getting out of it slowly and surely. So that's great. It's always great seeing the bikes with your own eyes, watching them fire out of Club and the Hamilton straight and through Abbey is awesome. And then it's the intricacy of Village and out is great. Ollie Motors. Because so many people said to me, Rob, I'm coming to Silverstone. Where should I watch? Geez, but Maggots, Beckett's, Victory, Hamilton, Fleet Fontaine. I don't know what half these corners. I don't know corners. I don't know corners. I know turn 1, turn 2, and that kind of thing. So good little bit of if anyone wants to go to Silverstone and needs to know what to do and how to get the best out of Silverstone, ask Ollie Moto. And the best ride out device too, James Thompson. Absolutely, the thing just works like two peas in a pod. It just works. Paul, let's jump onto Aprilia quickly because I'm getting hungry and we're quickly running out, getting to 2 hours in. Brilliant. I mean, we've spoken. We've been big critics of Aprilia and Bezzecchi up until this point. With Martin out, it hasn't been the ideal start. He was supposed to be the team leader, the man to take them to the next level after Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Vinales. 2 new riders for this year. So 3 new riders for this year with Ayagura. Very much a blank canvas to take the project to the next step. We all know what happened with Martin. We won't dive too much into that because we spoke about it last time. Bezzecchi hasn't really been the leader. We knew that we knew he wasn't going to be the leader. He was going to be the guy that I've signed this contract because we got the world champion. He's going to lead the way and I'm just going to reap the rewards and be fast. Sweet. No. You've got to be the team leader. Oh, okay. Hasn't worked out. Get to Silverstone and I promise you, and I must give credit to the journalist. I can't remember his name now. I mean, he's one of the biggest journalists. He's been there for 150 years. Anyway, I'll remember his name, but he said to me on Friday, could kind of see it, but he said to me on Friday, Bezzecchi is going to win this weekend. So yes, my bad. That's, I know he's had a good Friday, but that's Bezzecchi is going to win Sunday, no problem. We still had a good joke with him in the media center on Sunday because he got it right. But anyway, Bezzecchi didn't look good. I mean, he had a good Friday, yes, but then it kind of dipped and it kind of went up and down, and you were like, okay, this guy's going to have a decent weekend, but he's certainly not going to go win. Again, I don't know if something switched. Okay, the sprint race on Saturday had a bad start, made his way through, brilliant ride to the podium. You could already see signs of a great Sunday there. But he's this kind of guy that, again, just falls asleep or floats the first half of the race, and then he gets a pit board saying, listen, about 10 laps to go or something, and then he kind of just wakes up. You kind of get that feeling with Bezzecchi. Kind of such a laid back, very, very similar to Morbidelli, but shows a bit more enthusiasm for racing than Morbidelli. But he sits and he talks like this, and you got to turn your volume like real, or you got to put 5 mics on your phone to hear what the guy's saying. Very reserved kind of character, but woke up on Sunday. Hey, yes, Quartararo's failings for sure, but man, no, it wasn't Matt Oxley, Ollie Moto. It's an Italian guy or Spanish guy. I'll remember his name just now. But certainly woke up on Sunday, got his shit together, became that team leader that Aprilia needed, took advantage of Quartararo's failings, and you could see how much it meant to Bezzecchi and Aprilia after that race, because they celebrated it, like, especially with the cloud of Martin, and Martin pretty much saying your bike's not good enough to compete, I'm out of here. For them to pull that off, it's just
Yeah, absolutely. And he showed, I mean, he's a previous race winner, he's a previous world champion. Like we've said about many riders on numerous occasions, you can't only show up one weekend a year, however. You need to be more consistent. But when I saw him, he looked, especially Sunday, I know quite a few people were touting him on Saturday. I certainly wasn't one of them. But Sunday, from the get-go, he looked good. And he was making passes, which you don't often see with him. He's normally, once he's in fifth or sixth, he sort of seems happy that, well, I'm going to really wait for the oak in front of me to crash or make a proper mistake, run wide a la Marc Marquez and Bagnaia early in the race. And then he'll quickly sneak through two places or whatever. But he just seemed a little bit more assertive. I'm going to use that as opposed to aggressive.
Yes.
I think this whole drama with Martin has had an effect on the team. And instead of falling apart like they possibly did last year when Maverick and Aleix sort of gave up, I think what they've done is they've rallied together, possibly not consciously saying, okay, now we're going to show everyone what we can do, but subconsciously they've rallied together and said, we know our bike is good. We've always believed in the project. We now need to show. And something just clicked. Whatever, I think it comes from within the garage. Take nothing away from Bezzecchi. He has to ride the bike. The oaks in the garage can G you up as much as possible. You got to get out there and do what has to be done. But I think collectively, it was without maybe consciously making that decision. It was a bit of an FU to Martin. You think we cuck, we'll show you we're not. And then, as Rivolo said, Martin, I hope you're watching. Our bike can win. So I just think a great weekend. And I just think it's fantastic for MotoGP that we, as much as Ducati have dominated, now we've had 2 weekends. And this weekend, in all fairness, we nearly had no Ducati on the podium. They were lucky to be on the podium, no matter what anyone says. So, I think good for Aprilia. I just hope they carry this momentum now because, as you say, they partied like it was that won the world championship. They need to carry this momentum forward, not use it as we've achieved what we wanted to. We've proved a point to the Oaks sitting at home, and now we can go back to 10th place. I hope that's not their mindset.
Yeah, the two problems I have is exactly what you said, the momentum and the consistency. Going to go to Aragon where it's most likely going to be very hot. We know Maverick has pulled out of a race there before because the bike's been too hot. Aleix, so Aprilia, it's on or off. It's very on or off. When it's on, it's on. These guys are unstoppable. They really do look. Bezzecchi from that first session, FP1 on Friday, he had Pecco and someone else behind him. Within 5 laps, he had dropped them, and he was just smooth. Bang, 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 bang. He looked fantastic. The bike looked fantastic, and everything worked great. So that's my first issue. It's cool. I want to get excited, but we've seen this before from Aprilia with Aleix, and then he'll back it up with an 8th or 9th the next weekend, or a Maverick Vinales wins at Kota, and then, again, 9th or 10th, or the bike overheats and I can't ride it type thing.
Yeah.
The second problem I have is, touching upon the Martin relationship, how can there be a relationship there if Massimo Rivola comes on there and says, you see, Martin, our bike can win? Now, I'm not saying he said it like it. It could be construed as him saying, you see, our bike can win, or can you see, Martin, you see it, our bike can win. But
exactly.
There can't be a good relationship there. Surely you don't want to keep a rider on that's already, he's checked out. Martin's checked out. You can go win another 3 races. To me, Martin's checked out. He doesn't want to carry on with that. So great for Aprilia this weekend. I think it was brilliant for them. It's what they needed. Like you said, I think it's what MotoGP needed. It's a freshness. It gives us more energy. That, listen, there's a lot more than just this Marc dominating and Alex dominating. There's a lot more to the story of MotoGP. And there really is. Being at the track this weekend again, there's just so much happening in that ecosystem that you just can't fathom. I wish, I've said it so many times, I wish I could give every single fan that opportunity to have a pass, to go into the paddock, to go into pit lane, to go into the debrief and experience MotoGP like that, because it's just completely like that. But Aprilia, great for them. But yeah, let's not get too excited. As Andre Calvert says, yeah, he just follows Aleix. I don't. It is kind of weird that come to Aprilia, yeah, okay, Aleix. Well, okay, no, well, I'm at Honda now. Come to Honda, yeah. It's like it's weird. But anyway, the Martin story is going to evolve as we go, and we're gonna have to see where it goes. Speaking to some people that are, I would say, fairly close to Martin's camp within the paddock. I'm not going to mention any names and stuff, but don't know when they're going to see him this year. First of all, probably only after the summer break. And at second of all, what kind of level? Is it going to be at a level where eventually they just go, you know what, but just actually rather stay at home. This is costing us too much money, you being here, just rather stay at home. And almost defiantly saying he will not be on Aprilia next year. That definitely will not happen. It's either going, at this point in time, only realistic option seems like a Honda ride. This is where I go, okay, well, what's Martin? I mean, what's Marini? How's the Marini Mir thing going to work? Because apparently both of them are talking to Honda. It's like, well, there's only 2 spots there. And some cat's not going anywhere. Zarco's also touted for the HRC ride. Like, there's too many mouths to feed there. Speaking about the transfer rumors as well, Toprak Razgadioglu, a big rumor coming out that he's pretty much already signed for Pramac Yamaha. Again, that Pramac Yamaha is a funny one because there's only 2 spots there. One rider's got a 2-year contract, one doesn't. Jack's performing, the other one isn't. And Pecco's potentially going to Yamaha. Where does that leave Alex Rins, who's got a contract? So there's a lot. I don't want to dive too much into that because it's all just talk is cheap at the moment. Until we get some firm stuff, we've got lots of talk shows still to go where we'll have a lot more defined answers and we can touch upon that. But a lot of movement's going to happen in MotoGP for next year. I can tell you that right now. Sorry. No, that's fine. A lot of movement's going to happen and keeping my ears open. A couple of things that I definitely heard that there's gonna be some big movement, which I think is exciting in some ways. It's gonna flare up the paddock even more. But Martin's a tricky one because there's adaptation on that Honda that needs to be had, and I don't know.
And Rob, if you think of it like this, and we're going to talk KTM now, I know, but Bastianini had a go at KTM. Pedro saying, I'm not being patient. I can't wait forever. But these are guys that have raced 7 races this season. So I think they have the right to voice their opinion. Jorge Martin hasn't finished a Sunday race. He finished the sprint in Qatar, then he crashed. He was injured due to his own fault. Then he crashed in his supermoto training. The oak's broken 14 bones in his body in this year alone. Now he's accusing Aprilia of not having a bike that's capable of winning. When I say accusing, he's saying, how can he make that judgment? And he said that before this weekend, so now he's eating his words. I just think it's so unfair of him. I understand he had that clause or has that clause in his contract, but surely you only say, I've got a clause in my contract that says if I'm not challenging and competitive after 6 races, I can leave. Great, have that in your contract, but then do 6 races. Don't tell me how good you would be sitting on the couch with 14 broken bones in the space of 3 months. So I think it's, and I've said this to one of my mates, I might have said it last week on the show as well. That's something that Ducati had seen in the background, possibly, as to why they said, okay, we're not going to put you in the factory team. There might have been instances in the past, and we know he was very vocal 2 years ago about not getting the factory ride. When he stayed with Pramac Ducati, he was very vocal about how unhappy he was. I think behind the scenes, exactly what you're saying, Rob, as a TV viewer, we see the racing. We don't see the critical, psychological, mental story. Imagine being in that paddock now and Bagnaia just changing subjects. He's hearing rumors that he's on a Yamaha next year, whether it's true or not. Now, that's something else he's factoring. He's struggling with a Ducati. He's going to, now Martin's not even riding the bike, and he's got these comments to make. So, personally, I think if he does, well, as you say, the relationship is now fractured. I think he's hasn't just shot a hole in his foot. I think he shot his foot off, because whether he goes to Pramac or not, and I do think, to Honda, I think Pramac would have been a better buy for him because he knows them. But if he goes to Honda, like Zarco going to KTM, no big promise that that's going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be a very difficult situation for him, whichever way it goes. But he's still got to worry about another 15 races for this year, whether he's there or not. We know he's not going to be there for probably the next 4. So, yeah, in my way of thinking, he should have just controlled his emotions a little bit, had a discussion with management as a face-to-face thing, not a I'm at Le Mans to voice my opinion, which I think he went about it the wrong way.
So I can tell you now, I agree fully with you on that. Just to jump quickly back to Pecco, and then we're going to jump straight on to Brad, is a lot of the sentiments from a lot of high profiles in that paddock are that Pecco does need to leave that Ducati team. If he stays there, he could very well just kind of wither away being under that Marc cloud. Very much so that you cannot be Marc Marquez's teammate. You can't. You cannot be a competitive Marc Marquez teammate. It's a Lorenzo Rossi situation in many ways. It's a Marc Danny Pedrosa situation. It's one of those situations. So that's, I think, what's really ignited the Pecco to Yamaha, is that a lot of people in the paddock are talking about, listen, my bad, you've had your great years with Ducati, cool, but as long as that guy's there, he takes over. You can see how he celebrates with the team, and that everyone just gets drawn to him. So your time might be up there. That's why those rumors have become big. Let's jump onto KTM, and I will start with Brad Binder because a lot of people are asking. I'm going to give it to you as honestly as I can, Paul, from both a journalist side and a fanboy side. I went into the weekend like many of us fans, frustrated, wanting more, with my opinions on this and why does he stay in the pits longer and this and this and this and this. Rightfully so. At the end of the day, I think that's what fans should do. I don't think they should take it further than that, which is the biggest problem we have with a lot of fans. They take it further than that. But anyway, okay, let me check here. Let me see how this looks from the inside now. Followed it very closely, had some good conversations with Brad. He took the time out on Thursday to accommodate both me and Greg. Greg's just said he's available. I was going to try and get him on halfway through the show to give us a little bit of what he thought of his first MotoGP outside of South Africa. But Greg, we'll keep that for when we do the Talking TT show. I don't want to climb in now because I don't want to have to restrict you, but Brad was very hospitable to us on Thursday. I had to get a couple of things signed, and he was like, "Oh, sure." And he phoned his mate, and I had to get a Pedro Alpine Star helmet signed, and I was waiting outside the hospitality on Thursday night because Pedro was there. And Brad walks out. "How's it? We're having a good chat." He's like, "Do you need to get that signed?" So I was like, "Yeah, but I'll wait for him. Don't stress." He's like, "No." So he takes it into Pedro, and I said, "Listen, make sure he signs it nicely, eh?" So he signed it nicely. Cool, great. Brad came out. Same with Jack. You need Jack? Cool, phone Jack. Let's go to his camper van. There's Jack and his slops and his undies, and it was just great. And then Brad took us into his little motorhome type thing, and very just nice general chat. How many nappies have you changed? No, I don't change nappies. I'll help with the wet wipes, but Courtney changes the nappies. Well, that's okay, sweet. You're one of those guys. You don't change nappies. Then watched out through the weekend. Can see to the naked eye that it's not the Brad of old. It's not the confident Brad. There's definitely a confidence, being drained out of him, rightfully so, of what's happened. Any man, Pecco Bagnaia is going to do the same thing, just at a different level, but any man would lose confidence in the situation Brad in. You can see it. Still riding at a good level. I mean, it's ridiculously fast, stupid fast, but you can definitely see that there's a hint of hesitation in the riding style of the KTMs compared to everyone else. Anyway, watched as the weekend progressed, and Brad and KTM just never got going. Even from the outside, you could see that just never got going. It was a case of the soft tire is what we need for the temperature and grip, but it doesn't last on our bike. The medium tire just does not work, and you can't take the hard tire; it just won't get heat. Then there's the characteristics of the bike, not like being on the side of the tire for too long. There's a couple of instances at Silverstone where you've got to do that, especially that one long cutback where you've got to get onto the straight. Then there's the sluggishness of through the Foss, Maggots and Beckett section where you got to really flick the bike through there. Brad just never really felt comfortable and got going through there. All the KTM riders saying the bike just shakes. It just moves like this down the straight. Just no matter what they did, this thing just shakes. And it's hard to ride with confidence with a bike that has that feeling, So never put the weekend together. But hand on heart, what I can honestly say, what I saw with my own eyes and heard in the debriefs and everything, is a rider that gives his absolute all every single lap of every single session. A rider that was a little bit more honest this weekend. Brad's always played the game and been, my team are working hard and whatever. Came out and said we just didn't get it right. We made a lot of changes and we just didn't get it right. I didn't get it right on the Saturday, was it the Friday or the Sunday? One of them, but there was a lot of Brad taking responsibility, because in a way, we've touched upon it, a rider can make a difference. I think on the KTM, you could put Marc Marquez on that thing at the moment and it wouldn't work. But I'm more of a fan now of Brad than I was going into it, because of that, the work ethic of the guy and how he takes it. And I'm not here to defend Brad in any way or anything. I'm here to look at a human being that pours his heart and soul into the sport that he loves, and is just not getting the reward and the benefit out of it. It's just not happening. That's not down to Brad, Anaya, Vinales, or Pedro. It's down to KTM. KTM are failing their riders miserably. Brad plays the game and is a bit more politically correct about it, although he did put a little bit of blame on himself this weekend. I have no confidence. My confidence is really low. I just need to get confidence. I need to find something, and I didn't get it from this race weekend. Cool. Bit more honesty and cool. That's, KTM are letting them down. Based on discussions chatter this weekend, has any other teams expressed interest in Brad, part of their project? Jason, to be honest, no, there's not. Speaking to Brad himself, loyalty's there. He's got his contract with KTM. Looks like if everything works out, he'll be on a KTM again next year. Wants to make it work, desperately wants to make it work. KTM, I'm saying it is KTM's fault. It is KTM's fault. And they haven't given their riders what they need. Has the financial difficulties impacted them? Yes, it has. They haven't had development and new parts and stuff come in the way they want. In many ways, from what I can see, they're pretty much rotating old parts that haven't been crashed and damaged. Remember, a new part comes in, great. If it gets crashed, it's bent, it gets put on a shelf. What do you have to use? The old part. So they haven't had the development and the kind of that, that progression that the other teams have been able to develop and stuff. That's hindered them. But KTM is the big problem here. And they know that. It's not through lack of trying, lack of the current situation, of the cloud, of everything. But can KTM make it work? Andreeva Proctor, I think is his name. But can KTM make it work? Andrea, if I'm answering that honestly, right now, no. I can't see a way out for KTM anytime soon. But before I move on to the other KTM riders, I can tell everyone now, hand on heart, Brad needs us more than ever. You think your silly comment about him must retire and go race the NX10 Cup, you don't think it gets seen? It gets seen. Trust me, it gets seen. This guy sees and hears everything. And what do you think that'll do to him? Help him as a Binder fan on the Brad Binder supporters page. He's in a very difficult situation at the moment. He needs our support more than ever. So that's what I take out of it. I'm a bigger fan than ever, purely because I can see there's a guy there that needs me to be a bigger fan than ever. And that's what I'm going to be for him.
Yeah, Robin, there's not much more we can add. We've dug into this. We don't know the answers. I think you're highlighting a point that sometimes we just forget. Money in motorsport is critical. You're playing with the top dogs, but you're unfortunately riding for a company that is, they're struggling to keep their head above water. Yes, they've signed this new deal with the Indian company. Whether that money filters down through to the race team, I have no idea. Apparently, they had set aside the budget. But there's no doubt when they're in that much financial stress, the budget had to have been trimmed. No doubt. So I think we forget that. We watch and we're like, oh, Brad, oh, KTM, as you say, and I don't think there are too many people who have ever doubted his work ethic and his ability. But when you're in a situation where money rules the roost and the money's not flowing to give you the ability to rule the roost, and yet you're up against HRC, Yamaha, who certainly have made a big turn, Ducati, who are riding the crest of probably the biggest success in MotoGP, well, certainly in the four-stroke era. And now you're in a company that's struggling financially. It's got to have a ripple effect. And I think maybe it's really feeling that effect now, where 7 races in, no development, as you say, pinching parts from Peter to put on Paul's bike and vice versa. It's only going to get worse before it gets better. Unfortunately, I hope that's not the case. But you were there, you witnessed it. So I think it's not a doom and gloom story, but it's certainly not okay, now we're out of this, we're on our way up. And I think hearing the remarks made by Maverick and Bastianini, as you say, Brad will play the political game, a little bit more I, as you mentioned, but the other guys seem like they don't give a toss. They'll just say it as it is, whether it's to their detriment or not. It's not going to help them win races by playing the political game. So maybe you need that little bit of, guys, let's catch a wake up. So I feel desperately sorry for Brad, because the problem is he doesn't have an Italian or Spanish passport, which certainly helps. And his stock is certainly not rising. It's a difficult situation, and he has a contract for next year. So, yeah, which can be a good thing, but it could be that double-edged sword where, oh, damn it, he's stuck with them for another season. And if the financial tide doesn't turn, it's going to be very difficult.
Just to answer a couple of questions here, Grant Evans, would a sports psychologist help Brad? Grant, probably yes. I don't know if he's talking to one or not, but I could tell you what will help him more is less stupid comments and more support. I know South Africans, we wear our hearts on our sleeve when it comes to supporting our sportsmen. The box, when they're riding high, we love them. When they're not doing well, we're their biggest critic and we hate them. And I know that's part of being a sports fan. But being a true fan is when your team or your rider are at their lowest, is being that foundation to pick them up. So yes, a sports psychologist, we could be Brad's best sports psychologist. We as a collective, as Brad Binder fans, and what we put out in the social media world, that some of you may be naive enough to think that he doesn't see, his family doesn't see, his wife, Courtney, his mom and his dad, who sacrificed their life, their money, their everything to get them there. So yeah, he could be very well. I don't know. I've never really asked him that. I just want to be there for Brad. When I talk to Brad, I go there and as a friend, and I turn into a fanboy because it's Brad at the end of the day. It's famous, beautiful man that rides a motorbike really, really fast. And has achieved what he has. He's a world champion. So I do turn into a fanboy. Then I've got to slap myself and say, I'm Uncle Rob, I know this guy. I am a fan at the end of the day. So yeah, that's the answer to that. Brian Ritchie and a couple of people, Bajaj. So before the race weekend, Bajaj have come out and rescued KTM with the 600 million or whatever. There's a Bajaj sticker on the bike. Great. Couple of problems with that for me. And this is my person. This is not what I've heard. This is me looking at this. I'm not a businessman at all, but this is how I look at it. That's great that you've been bailed out. Bajaj haven't just given them that money. You have to pay that money back, and I'm sure there will be interest or something attached. There's a deal attached to that, first of all. How are you going to pay that money back when you can't sell motorbikes? Your brand's tarnished. And this is horrible for me to say because, as you can see, KTM sponsors this show and have sponsored and supported Motor Rider World and me personally in all my ventures from day one. Wherever you go, Rob, we advertise and we'll give you money. Okay, so it's hard for me to talk about it like this. It really is. And the connection with Brad to KTM. And the connection that I have with a lot of higher people at KTM that are South Africans. So you've got to pay that money back. People aren't buying your bikes because of everything that's happened. Your bikes are the old bikes. You can't reproduce new bikes because you haven't paid suppliers and stuff and logistics and whatever. Is that going to help now? the whole process is just disjointed to me. So yes, Bajaj have come in and saved us. Yay, great. Is that going to filter to the race team? As you said and Sven pointed out, you need money to go racing at this level. And that was the biggest thing I saw is there's from the weekend, there's not as much development and progress from a financial side of new bits and stuff from what I could see from the race weekend, if you know what I mean. All other teams and riders are talking about a new part or this and that. The KTM guys are like, I mean, Pedro, I'll get into the Pedro and Anaya, Pedro was a little bit more political about it, nice about it. Anaya was just, well, man, it was uncomfortable being there. But so that. Then the second thing is you've got this Bajaj sticker on the bike now. This company that's just lent you all this money, they're looking at this going, hang on. The first and easiest way for us to make money back is by stopping that race team. So you're showcasing yourselves. This is your CV to convince Bajaj that you need to carry on racing. Racing is your DNA. We're ready to race. Bajaj will look at this and go, just give me 600 million. You want another 100 million to go racing and to finish 12th and 13th and 14th with very good riders on your back. Forget it. Goodbye. So again, me pulling out of this, what I can take out of this is Tech 3 are independent race team. They can lose KTM and they can go lease Ducatis next year. No problem. Tech 3 Ducati, sweet, problem solved. Or Honda, and that's some of the talk to accommodate some of these riders and who's going to Honda and whatever. Tech 3, there was big talk. Tech 3 are going to get some Hondas for next year. One problem solved. Cool. Doesn't solve the other problem of, right, KTM, we can't be on the grid next year. Cheers, Dorna. It's 2 more bikes. BMW aren't going to come into a championship at this level and not perform. They would be stupid to when 2027 is right there. No one wants a 25 Ducati under Calvin. Yeah, Ducati will have to build more 24s. Okay, but there's BMW is not going to be stupid enough to come into this championship next year with what, a badged KTM that doesn't perform, or badged Suzukis that haven't been on the grid for 3 or 4 years. It's evolved a lot since then. Suzuki aren't coming deep. I look at it from the outside, and I think there can only be one possible solution to that. Also keeping Brad and Acosta or whoever's going to be there is almost a Red Bull Racing type effect in Formula One. So cool, they're not KTMs anymore, but Red Bull Racing still own these 2 bikes because Red Bull Factory KTM is a separate entity to KTM, and they've got money and KTM don't. We know that, but either way, there's a KTM attached to both of those. But Red Bull, who are funneling the money into it now, could become Red Bull Racing like Formula One, and then it becomes a Honda this year, Infinity this year, whatever this year. You can go pick and choose your manufacturer. Cool. The downside to that is manufacturers aren't going to be jumping to give Red Bull leased bikes because who knows if they've got a KTM guy now stripping this Ducati or Honda down to find out the inner workings of this bike. Just like as easy as we say, go Öhlins from WP, Öhlins are not going to give KTM a set of their forks because they know the first thing they're going to do is the WP guy is going to go, great. You know what I mean? That's not going to, we think it's as clear as that. It's not as clear as that. So that is my worry with the whole KTM process. There is big talk, big talk that they won't. KTM will not be on that grid next year. KTM, not Red Bull, KTM. There will not be a KTM machine on that grid next year, which, again, I'm not a businessman, but common sense, Paul, has to sometimes prevail. And you look at it and go, that's not too far-fetched to not believe.
Yeah, without a doubt, Robin. I've said it in previous broadcasts that we've done. Imagine working at KTM and they're going to retrench a third of the work staff, but the race team carries on, which is, I don't know what it is. It's 15% of their annual budget or 20% or whatever it is. Yes, and I know a lot of the money is sponsorship money, but a lot of it is KTM's money. The other point is KTM don't sell a RC16 road bike.
Yeah.
They used to have their RC8, which they've stopped. I know they made a very limited edition end of last year, early this year, but as a rule, they don't produce a road bike. So what is the benefit of the MotoGP team? You can always say, and I know we're not going to get into the Superbike versus MotoGP argument, but if you're watching MotoGP and you see a Ducati winning, you think, well, I'll go buy a Panigale. Or you see Zarco when you buy a Fireblade. Quartararo, you look at an R1. There's a direct end benefit to their racing MotoGP. I've always had this thing in my head with KTM. What is the end benefit to me as a consumer? No question, their motocross and off-road teams dominate, and there's the benefit if you're going to go buy an off-road bike. But the MotoGP, and I'm not saying you get into MotoGP because you want to sell your road bikes. You put in your brand out there, but you're putting out a brand where the average Joe who buys a KTM is watching US National Supercross on the weekend, probably MotoGP as an aside. So I don't know. So this money, you're quite right, Rob. I don't think it's an issue that's going to go away. And I kind of echo your sentiment, and I hope you are wrong. But KTM for next year is not a given. Absolutely not.
I just must appreciate the comment here from James Thompson. As an Englishman, I admire every SA sportsman I've watched. True warrior spirit and super respectful athletes. Thanks for that, James. That's really nice to hear as a South African and a South African fan of sportsmen. Yaku Swanepoel, Rob, why didn't you negotiate a Trackhouse Aprilia for Brad at that lacquer breakfast?
Yes, Yaku, that's a good comment.
I think it's a good comment. I'm nowhere near as good as Bob Moore is. So that one thing that does let me sleep at night is that Brad does have a really good management behind him. So, and he was there. Bob was there, which is also another sign. Or I don't know. I saw him. I've got a very good relationship with Bob. It's like, hi, Bob. Cool. But he was there. Take what you want from that. Bob, Brad, and Darren's manager was at Silverstone, but he does go to most of them, I will say. But he was at Silverstone, and he comes from.
Yeah, but you know, Rob, from what you've told us tonight, there's absolutely no doubt your manager has to be equally involved in MotoGP as you. You can't have Oken. I know he's an American, but I think he lives in Europe. But if he doesn't, you can't have him living in the States somewhere, hoping that deals are going to get. Someone's going to phone him and say we want to chat. You know exactly what you said, Rob. You've got to be active in that paddock. Jack Miller is your example, which he knows how to work the deal. And that's why it's always worked for him. So I'm glad to hear you saying, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. That means he's got feelers out and he's got fingers in the pie. Because make no mistake, there are two people at KTM who know exactly what Brad's standing is within that team. It's Bob Moore and it's Brad Binder. Because they have to. That's their job. So I think that's very good news in terms of Brad. So if they'll know sooner rather than later what the future holds for KTM, they might not announce it if they are stopping. They might not announce it till late in the season. But I also think, and I've said it before, I don't think Dorna will allow that team to fall out. Yes, maybe you're right. It won't be branded as a KTM factory racing. It might be Red Bull Racing. And Dorna would like to keep that there, without a doubt. They can't afford to lose bikes. The show has become too big. So I think that's also a little bit of a plus in terms of the KTM Brad's team story, that the team they'll go racing next year. Under what guise, that's what we'll have to see.
So interesting comment here from Daryl Bryce Nathard, and this is my perfect ideal situation. I would love to see Brad stay with KTM and that story just ends happily and he goes and wins the World Championship next year. Their financial problems are over. Brad Binder shows his true quality. Yay. Love that. I love it. Works on both ends for me. That doesn't work. Pecco goes to Yamaha. Factory Ducati spot opens. Either Fermin Aldeguer or Alex Marquez goes in there. Brad Binder goes to Cressini Ducati. I would love that.
That to me would be the perfect deal.
That
to me would be the perfect deal. With Alex out, put Brad in. That to me, Rob, if that could happen, if we could choose any one scenario in MotoGP, that would be my choice.
I love it. I've got very good ties with Richard and a couple of guys within that Cressini team. Cressini probably have, in fact, I think 90% of the guests in the Cressini hospitality are South Africans. It's every time I've been, it's just South Africans. So yeah, I would love that situation. So let's see. All I can say is, if you're a Brad Binder fan, if you're not, have your say respectively. Of course, you're entitled to that. If you are a fan and frustrated, like I am, like we all are at the moment, imagine how frustrated Brad is, first of all. And we're fan to a rider that is low in confidence and needs us more than ever. Let's go be there for the guy. That's all I'm saying. let me jump straight into Pedro Acosta. The comments were pretty much put out there. People asked him, just talk VR46 or Honda, and he just said, for now, I've got a contract with KTM, for sure. I signed with KTM to go win because they wanted to be competitive. I want to be competitive. Great. I've won 2 world titles with them. Why wouldn't I sign with them? To carry on this relationship. Okay. It's not working. That's fine. But yes, I do want to. I'm here to race and to be competitive. I'm not here to do anything else. So whether that's with KTM or not is still to be decided. But then he was asked, okay, but for the rest of the year, or if you have to see out your contract next year, do you then have to accept that and be patient? That's when he said, I will not accept not being competitive, and I will not be patient. And he said it. Pedro's very vibrant, and the swear words go flying, and he jokes and he laughs. He's very cool. He's very cool. He's very open and honest. And you can see that poor PR girl next to him just has kind of lost hope. She's kind of just lost hope trying to script him or put a noose around him or something. She's just like, okay, you just say what you want. Although one of the rules are you're not allowed. So a rider might come in early and sit, and the PR officer might be sorting out the other rider. The rule is you're not allowed to talk to the riders without the PR lady. It's PR lady or guy. You're not allowed to. And Pedro had came in early, and he's very inviting, and he starts talking to his Spanish mates, and then the English guys go, and he started talking. Woo, did that cause? Because, and this is maybe why, one of the comments were, he likes to drive his van because he always goes like, I'm not rich, I can't afford plane tickets. I must drive my van. And he does. He drives to Le Mans and he drives all over. I think that must be to the frustration of the team because they like their athletes business class, nice and refreshed, want to drive all over the place. Anyway, Pedro's he's just that kind of kid, His mom probably has his bank card and still buys him his shoes and his clothes and stuff, But anyway, he sat there and he was very inviting. And then someone said, are you flying this time? And are you going to have beers? Yeah, of course I'm going to have beers. And this time I have to fly because I'm going from here. I go to Austria and then I go. Now, you think a bunch of journalists in front of you, and it's like, okay, everything that's going on, why are you flying to Austria? That's what happens in these meetings. Yeah. Anyway, this Leah PR chick comes, what? I told you nobody talked to him because she's just like, in her head, she can only imagine what Pedro put out there, Yeah. A lot of it was in Spanish, so I didn't have a clue. But the English, the biggest thing I took was like, I'm flying to, are you flying to Austria? That's very cool. But anyway, then it was I will not accept and I will not be patient. And that's one thing KTM can understand. His biggest frustration, and he said it clear as day, is I picked up on some bad points of this bike the first time I climbed on it last year. We still have not come close to solving those problems. That is my biggest frustration. Because my question, not to him, but to the other KTM riders, was from the outside, we just see KTM going up, down, left, right, center, everything we've spoken about, Paul. That's what it seems like to us. And it's always we found something, but you found nothing. You've gone backwards. And they were, Anaya certainly was, it's the worst race of my career. I'll get onto Anaya now. But anyway, to end off on Pedro, won't accept, won't be patient. I wanted to work with KTM. I really do. But without saying it, but if it doesn't, and I have to move a la Marc, first of all, he's seen the Marc exercise. Second of all, he's seen the Brad exercise. Loyalty gets you nowhere. Brad's been loyal and been fast, and there's been some great times, yes, but look where he is now. I don't want to be Brad Binder 2.0. So that's kind of what he highlighted in a very vibrant Pedro way, without saying it, if you know what I mean. So that was great to see how vocal Pedro was about it. Like, listen, they have to do more, and I'm not going to be patient, and I'm not going to accept it.
Yeah, which you can understand. He I don't want to say he signed with false promises. He rode the bike last year and he was very good on the bike. This year, and we know, correct. And it's money, and very interesting to know that he was flying to Austria. It'll be I'm going to imagine it's a sit down and where we're going from here story. What's the direction of the bike? What's the team dynamic? What does our future hold? I would imagine I don't think he was summoned there. I think maybe they've called him to say, just by chance, did Brad mention anything to you about going to Austria?
No.
Okay, so it might just be a Pedro thing to look at that contract and say, listen, Honda are throwing the money, or VR46. What do we need to do to get me out of this contract? Could be that, eh? So interesting to hear that. Just, we'll never know until we know.
And, like, again, no disrespect to DG, Antonio, or Morbidelli in a way, but VR46 Rossi looking at this going, okay, yeah, he's Spanish. But this first of all, he's a very popular Spanish rider with a good following. The next best thing, we put this kid on our bike, and all of a sudden we're winning races more often than not.
Yeah.
We can't pass it. If it's going to cost us $2 million to buy him out of his contract, and Pedro takes a little less money, which it's not about the money for Pedro at the moment. It's about being fast. And the same journalist, I cannot believe I can't remember his name. The same journalist summed up the Martin exercise perfectly. Some riders are here to perform, and some riders are here that have performed, and it's about the money now. So Pedro wants to perform. He's at that stage where he wants to perform. So I'll take less money. I want to perform. Marc took the less money to perform.
Yeah.
You look at the Martin situation.
Yeah.
I sucked tie and tit in many ways to perform, and then I won a world championship. I've won more world championship now. This situation is not working. Now it's about the money.
The money, yeah.
Now I need the money. Now HRC is the money. When you play it like that, and when you break it down like that, it makes sense. So anyway, that's the Pedro exercise. I can see him moving. I can see him on a VR46, or I can't. The Honda conversation has slowed down.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't see it, but someone in the paddock said to me they saw him walk in the HRC hospitality and the VR46 hospitality. Manuel Pacino, Alex van der Berg, you beautiful creation from Cape Town. I lives in Joburg and sells bikes. Love you. Well done. Manuel Pacino. That's the journalist. Brilliant guy. Fantastic guy. Very good, mate. I've done a lot of talks with him back in 2022 to fans and stuff. I get along so well with him. Brilliant. That's it. So yeah, anyway, I didn't see it with my own eyes. I didn't, but I had people tell me that they saw that happen. So take with it what you want to take. Bastianini. Bastianini. God, it was uncomfortable. It was just it was like being in the headmaster's office with God, it was uncomfortable. Anyway, he just said, worst race of my career. I asked him that question. He said, it's exactly what we did. He said, started on the Friday, actually felt pretty good. We made changes, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And nothing fixed. He pretty much said, I have tried every single combination there is to try on this motorbike, and nothing works. It makes no change. We go for a big change, the bike doesn't feel any different. He said, before you would make a change to a bike, I could feel a difference. Nothing works on this bike. Straight. He said, I want the Ducati workers, bad English, me meant staff. I want to meet with the Ducati workers to talk about my future, because at this point they're ruining KTM, sorry. They're ending my career. Straight.
Yeah.
They are ending my career. I was here 1 year ago. I won sprint and main race. 1 year later, I can't finish top 15. I can't compete. And nothing works. Done. That's pretty much, I mean, the PR chick just stood there. Like, she was also probably like the Soaks. He's probably already gone, to be honest. If you're going to hang around, the PR is going to be more like, whoa. Yeah. If you're already gone, what's the PR? This doesn't concern. You're gone anyway. So that's definitely over. Talk about replacing Martin at Aprilia already for Bastianini, which could be a good move. But I've said it all along. Bastianini is that character that needs to be in a Cressini, cuddly, happy environment. So whether he's going to get that from Aprilia, maybe. Aleix certainly got it there. He would probably be gunning for that Cressini seat. And it was mentioned to me by people within that thing that potentially could find his way back there. So that exercise is done. But yes, Bastianini was the biggest one to call out KTM at the end, say, this is not good enough. You're ruining my career. I'm out. But this is pathetic.
Yeah, which is it's such a difficult one. He must have known, leaving the best bike on the grid to go to, I'm going to say, by all those standards, a mediocre bike. He's now realized that he's gone to, at the moment, a bit of a dog. how he's going to overcome it. As you say, Rob, if he's checked out already, we complained last year that Maverick and Aleix checked out after half the season. This guy they've done a third of the season. That's a big worry. I think what's also going to start happening now with and I'm going to say the lesser of the top echelon of riders. So the Bastianinis, the Bezzeckis, the De Gianantonios, Millers, they're now going to, the factories are going to only sign 1-year contracts. They're going to say, no, now there's no long-term security because every time we give you a 2-year deal, you guys just think it's your right to change the deal. So you actually don't have to put any input in. You ride the bike for 7 races and then you say, well, this sucks. I've only got to do a few more races and then I'm putting my hat in my CV in the hat and I'm moving on. So I think it's going to cause an unhealthy dynamic. And the story with Marc Marquez was very different. He had 8 years with Honda. He did it the right way. There were no rumors that he was leaving until yes, we knew the rumors, but he had gone to Honda and said, if you do not allow me to move on, I'm done. I think he went about it the right, and I'm going to say an ethical way. Yes, he broke a contract, but it was a contract he had been in for a long time. He had served them well. Martin, Bastianini, they've got no grounds to say, well, I've done the best I can, I'm out of here. I'm not saying they haven't. Okay, Martin, a different story. Brad Binder is not jumping up and down. He might be feeling it and saying it behind the scenes, but in the general public, he's not making a big scene about how unhappy or happy he is. And I think this is going to cause rifts. It's going to have a ripple effect on contracts going forward. And I say, not for a guy like Marc Marquez and 1 or 2 of the real high-profile riders, the Quartararos, but the other riders who, like Jack Miller, Jack's always saying every year, by the 5th race, I'm already trying to find a new job because all that's going to happen is now you're going to have an extra 4 riders in the same boat. So there's going to be no stability and there's just going to be this nervous anxiousness every single race weekend, which can be problematic in terms of riders now riding way above their abilities because they need to earn a ride for next year. I think long term it could cause big problems.
I think it's going to be a big musical chairs for next season, Paul. If I look at the top rack to Yamaha, which I was surprised about because the Honda one seems so strong, then Jack Miller this weekend he's going to Honda World Superbike. Then I kind of thought, okay, well, the top rack conversation has obviously stopped there if Miller's name's now on Honda because the top rack conversation is not there anymore. So that opened that up. Olimoto brings in a good discussion here as well. I know Digi's under contract with Ducati for next year in the VR46 team. Would Rossi drop Frankie for Acosta? And what if Marini loses his seat? So there's a big headache for Rossi. He's got does he look after his half brother? Because I can potentially still see Marini losing his ride there. So what could no one's going to be jumping up begging Marini to come ride for them. Do they pass up on a Pedro Acosta to keep a Digi on a contract or a Morbidelli? So there's a big headache for them. Then there's the Martin. Does he go to Honda scenario? What happens to KTM? There's all these factors that are coming. Alex van der Berg is asking, do you think Marc would ever consider going back to Honda now that they're more competitive? Alex, I can tell you now, no. From what I can see and how happy Marc is in that Ducati environment, I know it was said when he retired, but I look at it like when you talk to someone that's retiring or not retiring, that's leaving your company that you work with kind of closely, but you was a work colleague and you always go, oh, no, it's a pity to leave you, to see you leave. We must definitely stay in contact afterwards. You need to stay in contact. No, you saw that person at work, you're not going to stay in contact. That same kind of relationship. Marc, in that situation, in that environment, with the emotion, he wanted to believe that I'd be back. He's so happy in that Ducati environment. He can go win another 2, 3, 4 championships. Who knows? Depending on what happens with 27 and the new bikes. But Ducati are going to be competitive either way. The biggest challenges to Marc Marquez at this point in time, going forward, I'm looking the next 4 years. Maybe Alex, if he continues this way, I still don't see that as, I don't know. There's still something missing with Alex. Yes, he's there now. but can he pull it off? Can he pull it off season after season? You know, it just seems like he'll have just one good season, and then everyone will catch a wake up. And I don't know, maybe Fabio and Yamaha, maybe David Alonso when he comes, maybe Pedro Acosta if he makes the move, maybe Pecco if he gets things right. Realistically, Brad Banana Ducati, maybe, you know, those kind of things. So I think there's going to be a massive mashup coming in terms of who's where. Contracts, as you said, I think the new normal is going to be a 1-year contract, because manufacturers are going to look at it and go, I can sign you on a 4-year contract, but you can just bullshit. Or there's going to be a 2-year contract, but with all these clauses, you know, like this Martin clause. After 6 races, if I think it's not worthy, I can break out of it. Huh?
Yeah. Otherwise, Rob, the factories are going to put such big buyout clauses that you're going to end up with a rider there that after year 1, he's desperately unhappy, but he has to stay in for year 2 because it's not financially viable for a rival to buy him out. And now you've got a guy who's desperately unhappy, stuck in a contract that he can't get out of. So it's going to be such a catch-22. But I do agree with you. I think this season is going to be kind of a shift in the whole dynamic, depending on what happens with Martin. I think if that relationship, which I can't see it happening, but if that fracture is repaired, it's going to change the whole dynamic once again. But I can't see that happening.
No. So we have to wait and see. That again, this is all just, you know, speculation and talk, whatever. Viñales was a little bit more, you know, I saw Viñales warming his bike up on Friday. He was outside with his team and with the bike and happy and smiley. And, you know, the Maverick we've seen so far this year, been going quite fast, been leading the KTM project in many ways, and looks happy. Then when excuse the pun, the shit started to hit the fan, I thought, okay, this debrief is going to be interesting, because now we're going to see this Maverick that throws his toys out the cart. Came in there and he went, and I kind of asked the same question and he said, you know, there's nothing to, yes, I'm upset because we weren't competitive, but I knew coming into this weekend the KTM was never going to perform here. It was a track that I had written off on this KTM. It was never going to work. The fact that I had to use the medium front tire, which I have hated from day one, wrote it off even more for me. So I'm not upset. He said, obviously I'm upset for the weekend. I want to come and be competitive. But I'm not sitting here going, why aren't we competitive? We were never going to be competitive. So I write this off and I move on to Aragon. Straight like that. And I was like, Jesus, you know what? Yeah. Kudos. That's a good way to look at it, because it's very easy to drain yourself and be consumed and do an Anea and go, that's it. You've ruined my career, my worst race of my life. Goodbye. Maverick's going, I write it off. I still look at the positives from the previous race weekends. From what I could see, Pedro was riding a different chassis combination to the others, from what I could see from the outside, an older chassis configuration, and he ran the soft tire, and I think that definitely benefited him compared to, and by the sounds of it, he had slightly less movement compared to Anea, who said, yep, the bike was moving all over the show. Maverick, the bike was moving all over the show. Brad, the bike was moving all over the show. So again, that, you know, that Maverick get it right in Qatar with whatever chassis, I want to say, he could run because of what they had available. Remember, there's not just this, in this current situation, there's not 20 of that chassis lying around. Or There's 4 of those chassis that get built. If you blix them down on one, then there's only 3. And now you can't have one because you've blixed yours. Then you blix on another one. Now there's only 2. That is kind of, it seems like what happens. So, and that's me thumb sucking from what I could pull from what the guys were saying. It definitely seemed like Pedro had a slightly different configuration. But again, KTM went in this weekend now with a short pipe again. So the long pipe worked at Qatar. Now you got the short pipe again. That's why I asked, listen, you guys just do this. From the outside, we as fans, media cap off. Me as a fan, I just see you going, bop, 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 and nothing works. Like, what the hell's going on with you guys? Frustrating. The KTM, I didn't. It was very negative, the KTM story this weekend, from the fact of the results, the future, the everything. You know, never mind the riders, which are just tangled up in that. The KTM, it was a very, very negative outlook from KTM this weekend, unfortunately, that I took out of it. So, just we can't be expecting fireworks. We can't be expecting something to turn around. They've got the Aragon test coming up, which from what I could gather from them, there will be some new parts hopefully available, because some funds maybe have been released, or. But again, we have to wait and see. It's not like, yeah, we have money, let's go make a part that's going to work.
Yeah. We know what we need, we'll do it. Yeah. I think on that point, though, Rob, what you said about Maverick, surely they get Maverick, we know they're pooling all their data. Surely they pool their enthusiasm and listen to Maverick and say, listen, guys, do the best you can, but don't let it get you down. Anaya, chill. We know this is not going to be great. Let's move on. Do the best you can. You can't skip the weekend. But then to get all wound up and throw your toys out the cot, maybe he needed to do it. Maybe he had to express how he's feeling, old Bastianini. But the converse is the way Maverick dealt with it. Possibly he's going to get to Aragon with the right mindset that, okay, the bike should be good here. Let's get going. Where Bastianini is going to get there and say, oh, you've changed nothing. How am I going to be any better? Very difficult. Someone asked the question, does Brad have a psychologist or a sports coach, sports psychologist? The psychological game is huge. You're dealing with the best of the best of the best. The margins, the mental aspect, the mental fortitude, yes, it's immense. I don't know. KTM, as we said earlier when we started with KTM, no matter what anyone says, money runs motorsport. And when you're struggling cash-wise, puts you on the back foot.
Someone asked earlier if Pit Byra was there. Yes, he was. All the big KTM guys were there. So it's all hands on deck at KTM. I can promise you it's all hands on deck, and they're not getting it right. It's the same with Brad. Brad kind of spelt it out and said, I'm just low income. Brad just needs, the whole project needs something to happen, and Brad will get a bit more confidence. I liked what he said on Friday or Saturday, I can't remember, where the journalist said, yeah, but Maverick says you got to ride it smoothly. Brad eventually went, listen, I know I've been told that you ride this thing smoothly. I've tried different things and nothing works. I'm going back to my old riding style. Back to kind of Sven's point where he says, it's not the rider. Brad kind of just said, I'm going back to my way here. I've got to ride it how comfortable I am. The problem is, even if I ride it the way I like to, it's not working.
I'm
not getting the feeling from the bike. I used to be able to do this. I can't do this now. Whether it's the tire, the bike, the suspension, whatever it is, I want to do this. The bike won't let me do this. And as I can see a hesitation and uncomfortableness from the KTM riders. Maverick, to me, even better than Pedro, looked the most comfortable out on track. Pedro looks like he's adapted a bit more, but there's still this hesitancy. He's certainly not turning in as from the middle of the track as early as he was before. He's starting to use a bit more, so he's starting to adapt and try. And we've seen it over the last couple, other than the sprint race as Le Mans where he crashed, but finished the main race there as the top guy, finished the main race on Sunday as the top guy. So certainly he's found something that's working a bit better for him. Brad just needs to now find that something that works a little bit better for him. Let's not forget, at Le Mans, in those tricky conditions, Brad was third when he crashed out. That could have been a different scenario. Kota, he was closing in for a potential podium, crashed out. Or the bike broke. That could have been a different situation. So there's been glimpses, by no means the solution, but glimpses of positivity. But then when those glimpses smack you in the face and, sorry, it's like flashing an ice in front of a kid and then throwing it on the floor. That seems to be what's happening with Brad and them. Once he can have a taste and some things go a little bit kind of his way, I'm not saying he's going to go and win and whatever, but at this point, top 6, is a great result. And start that the confidence building process then starts.
Yeah, or even just a weekend, regardless of the result, where he feels confident on the bike. Mark Meany finishes 10th or 11th. But if he says, yes, that was how I like it, that also is going to build his confidence. So as much as we want to say, no, his confidence is only going to work if he's top 5, might just be a case of if he gets a bike, he can work with it. Might be on a day where a Honda, Yamaha, and 3 Ducatis are better than him. But if he within himself says, no, now we're heading in the right direction, that's the confidence he needs. And, they need to find that. And hopefully Aragon is the place that piece of the puzzle falls into place.
Brilliant, Paul. It's almost 11
maybe tomorrow.
So I'll do the rest of the night off, and everyone else. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for all the great. Last point, and Vickers, well done for bringing. He needs a Q2 spot that will give him confidence already. Vickers, before we end,
100%.
Paul, the one criticism I will give Brad that I think he needs to do and frustrated me that I didn't see. And Sven, yes, Bruno coming up will also be a good indication because we know how Brad and KTM have been at Bruno. Pecco is struggling at the moment. He doesn't have the feeling or whatever. So what does he do? He gets a tow to make sure he's in Q2.
Yeah.
Mark, when he was struggling, whether you loved it or not, realized he was struggling, what did he do? He used a tow to get into Q2. Now, I haven't discussed this with Brad. I haven't mentioned it, whether it's a pride thing that he doesn't want to tag anyone, or whether the bike doesn't work, or whether he just doesn't like. I don't know what it is. But Brad,
just do it.
Just tag. See how it feels. If it gets you into Q2, I agree. That already is a confidence. Set your weekend up. If you're going into every weekend missing out on Q2 by 0.0001, which he has done fractions, it's a kick in the teeth. Get yourself whatever you need to do to get into Q2, whether it's tag, whether it's literally throw a rope and tie it to Mark. I don't care. Get yourself into Q2, but tag. At work, work tag. Do it.
A good example is Rins. He's done it 2 weekends in a row behind Mark, and it's worked for him. So, 100%. Just give it a go and see how it pans out. But certainly, because it takes a whole chapter of stress out of the weekend, buys you additional tires. You can do different things. Certainly, and we've said it many times on the show, Rob. Q1, Q2 is critical. So Friday afternoon, whatever you do, make sure you get a tow. So I agree fully with that comment. I think it would be in his best interest, and I don't know if it is an ego thing or a confidence thing, but it's got to a point now where it's almost a desperation thing. Just get out there and do it. And the fact that Pedro Acosta might not be doing it is irrelevant. If it's going to work for you, nobody says to Rins, but you shouldn't actually be doing that because Fabio doesn't do it. He doesn't care. He's straight through to Q2. No one remembers a week later how he got there. So, I think that's a good call. Let's hope Brad listens to that and gives it a bash.
Got nothing to lose at this point. Sean van Rooyen, my first one. Awesome show, gents. Sean, thank you so much for joining us and welcome. We look forward to entertaining you for the rest of the year and going forward. Ollie Moto, another top podcast, guys, the best there is. Thank you so much, Ollie Moto, for all your comments and stuff. Johnny Martins, Alex van der Berg, I wish I could give you a press pass for Bruno, but it sadly doesn't work like that. It's getting a lot more strict with the new owners and everything that goes on there. So very lucky that we could be a part of it as it is as Motor Rider World. But brilliant show, Paul. Thank you so much. Go give your wife a kiss and apologize from my side that I've kept you up very late on a school night. Appreciate your time, Paul, as always, and your insight. Love it. 2 fans talking MotoGP. Not just 2 fans, 100 and something fans talking MotoGP. So thank you to every single one for tuning in. A couple of weeks off now, but can't wait to we talk next time, talking MotoGP Aragon. It's also TT time. We'll be getting a lot of insight from Greg Maloney. We'll be talking to AJ. So Motor Rider World is the place to be for all your fix, your motorcycle racing fix. Motor Rider World is there.
Yeah, Rob, an absolute privilege to do this with you, and I've got such FOMO, but yes, your insights are fantastic, so really much appreciated, and sorry I made you do all the talking, but yes, it was so interesting, absolutely fantastic.
Paulie, we've got to do one. I was speaking, James phoned me the other day, and we've got to do a Rob, Paul, and James at that media level where we can get you in there as well, because I'd love to see you'd probably take more out of it, because I do turn into a bit of a fanboy. So then I think I remember we'll do it together one day, and I'm sure. And you know what, Paul, we're doing something right, because as I said, in the paddock at Silverstone, there was great talk. I had some journalists say, love your stuff. MotoGP were very accepting to Motor Rider World, so whatever we're doing is working, and they love having us there. So
listen, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're talking about something we absolutely love. That's it.
Done.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Best way to end the show. So thank you, everybody. Good night. Paul, thank you again, my bud.
Only a pleasure, Rob. Chat in 2 weeks' time.